we are good to go. Carla, punch it live. Here we are at 7:15 on June 23rd. In council chambers are Carla, Peter, I, Pam, and a member of the public, Mr. Doherty. I see others that are online as well. So we will commence the meeting now, and I'm calling to order. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Just a sign from anybody. Thank you. Any changes or amendments? I have a couple. I'll let anybody else go first. Mr. Deusen.
I'd like to add under item 9, resolutions, ministerial order 192 resolution. And I'm going to suggest that I'm going to put it out there for council to consider whether you want to consider that at the beginning of the agenda as it pertains to public meetings and the facilities that the municipality provides for public meetings, the ability for the public to attend in person versus online, and the best efforts that the municipality is making in order to achieve openness and transparency in the conduct of municipal governance.
I think why don't we could follow public participation, public delegation with a public-oriented resolution. Does that fit with everybody?
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Thank you, Norm. So yes. Okay, we're going to go with that. Okay, so I will move that in. Okay, any other changes before I go? Councillor Barmere.
So I just want to add under council reports that I'd like to talk about our submission for an expression of interest in the low carbon and renewable fuels program, part 3 as a fuel supplier. There's a deadline of July 3rd looming, and I think we can get an expression of interest in.
So in brief, it's low carbon what?
It's the renewable and low carbon fuel program, LCFR credit program under the BC government.
Thank you. I've got you down, and I'll read it again when I go. Thank you very much. Hands down. And other than I will go through the motions and tidy it all up then. So what
were you going to add the Kelvin Grove dog walking thing? Under your 8B1?
Yes, doggies.
Okay.
And BB. Okay. So additions, which we've agreed to, is that changes in addition. So resolutions, which would be number 9, which is ministerial order 192, will be moved to the front, and it will become item number 5. And then everything else will follow suit. That would be the first. The second one is that on the mayor report, it will be just one item, and that will be dogs at Brunswick Beach. And then under council reports, we've got Councillor Bein as reported, and 2 for Councillor Barmere, items number 2 and number 3. The first one is the Postmaster, and the second one is the low carbon fuel program. And it's not a change, but what I will do when we get to item 8A4, which is the CAO request for decision on a variety of these strategic initiatives, I'm going to split them up, and you might grab your pen and mark your virtual sheet. So we'll lump the first 4 together as number 1. Number 5 will be number 2. Number 6 will be number 3, and number 7 will be number 4. And that just breaks them into common topics. Okay, thank you very much. Any other changes, amendments? There being none, can I have a motion to accept the agenda as amended? Thank you. Seconder, thank you. We're good. Public participation, I believe there is, I guess we can do this virtually too.
Okay. Yeah.
If there are some people on the line, if you'd like to be part of the 2-minute public participation piece, this would be your time to put your hand up. I'm looking for it. Give you a second to scramble looking for the item if you'd like. Otherwise, we'll proceed. Going, gone, first time. Going, gone a second time, going, gone a third time. No public participation today, which brings us to public delegation requests. And before us, we have Mr. Doherty, and his topic is exception to the noise bylaw, and it's on council package page 7. Mr. Doherty, you are up.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and Council, and thanks for hearing from me. I'll keep it short and sweet this evening. I don't think it's too complicated, the topic, but I would like to just let you know how business is. We worked really hard down at the General Store and Cafe in quite challenging times. It's oftentimes, particularly as we're coming from the brighter, sunnier months, we rely upon a lot of the younger folk to help us get by, and that's not just in the cafe but the store. A lot of those young people are preferring to take I think it's the SEMA, so we're struggling, but we've got some good staff valiantly plugging on down there. What I'm looking for is an exception to bylaw 283 pursuant to section 6M, allowing for amplified music on the patio of the General Store Cafe in the period July 1 to September 30 on weekends of public holidays between the hours of 12 p.m. and 9 p.m. I did send an email around earlier today with some supplemental thoughts and information for you to consider, during this application and whether it be granted. I'd ask for your support in this time. As I said, we're struggling on down at the cafe and store. We're down about 20% year on year in terms of trade. And so, like a lot of public organisations, I'd be hoping for some assistance here to help us make things a little bit livelier, over the summer months. I think it's important for a number of reasons. One, people have been cooped up in their homes. They may all be getting cabin fever. I know that last year it was, I believe, a very successful 3-month period. We saw all of a broad cross-section right across all of the age demographics attend. And all I heard was good feedback. I did want to speak to a couple of things that I've written, and then I'll just rely upon what I've written. I do have Strata Council support for this application. Strata Council met last Friday morning, and then that feeds into COVID considerations. During that meeting, we also received Strata Council support to place picnic tables back on the grassed area to the north of the complex, which will mean that we can continue to operate on a much more sparse attendance on the patio itself. Unless there's any questions that I can answer, that's all I propose to say.
Thank you very much.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Just to clarify the expansion of your space for the liquor license has already been granted, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Sorry. Thanks.
Because it's
very
not,
much.
it's a food primary license, so it doesn't require municipal input.
Thanks very much for that, Peter. Yes, and what I mentioned that a number of authorities are looking to help out businesses such as ours during tough economic times. In order to allow us to space out on the patio, from a social distancing perspective, we've also been allowed to carry over our occupancy under that food primary license, which is 38 on the patio, over onto the grassed area. The numbers aren't allowed to be increased. They just spread over a wider area.
I have a question. Mr. Doherty, just thinking as you were speaking, for the grassy area, is there any contemplation of the music piece going over there?
No. So thanks, Mayor. Good question. So the guitarists, and we only propose having guitarists, just so that I can clarify again. Guitarists, they will be in the main local residents. We're doing all we can to support every local resident we can in every aspect of our business. It will be down the southern end, at the southern end of the patio, and perhaps that probably gives some currency and some vigour to the argument that amplification is necessary so that the people on the grass can enjoy the music as well.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any other questions? Hands up. Councillor Abbott.
Hey, Craig, thanks for that. The COVID restrictions or protocols that you've put in place, some of the ones that you have at the moment seem to be followed. A lot of them aren't followed. I believe you're trying to beef those up. Do you have a plan for if you get a busy day, first time you have one of these social events, do you have a plan for how you're going to enforce that? Or I guess encourage it might be a better word, because I'm not sure how much enforcement you can do.
Absolutely. It's just going to come down to policing. I live on site, as most councillors know. I spend a lot of time in the store and cafe these days. I'm not backward in coming forward and asking people if they look like they're getting a bit close, to remind them we're in the middle of a pandemic and they should give each other some space. So other than that, councillor, it's just going to be, I'm encouraging my staff, particularly my managers, and I now have managers on both the store side and the cafe side, to remind people that physical distancing is a provincial, if not suggestion, but policy direction.
Okay, so you'll be on site during these events, and sort of ultimately it will rise up to you if it becomes an issue?
Well, to a large degree, council, that's correct, because I'm under the food primary licence. I'm the responsible person in any event, so it behoves me to be there. But anyone that's handling alcohol on our premises has their serving it right certificate as well too. So I do appreciate the obligations. That's not so much a COVID issue, but that's just these are unique times. It's just an ongoing educational effort from my perspective and from my senior people's perspective. And we've got some good young people there that understand that we're in unique times and that they shouldn't be afraid to speak up. But we have at least one of those two managers on the premises at any given time.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, councillors? Okay, there being none, I propose that I'll put forward a motion. CAO was bylaw number, correct? Sorry, just don't get on that one.
Bylaw number.
Bylaw number 283 pursuant to section 6M.
I think so.
Let's go with that. Done. Thank you. My motion is that Village of Lions Bay provides an exception to bylaw 283 pursuant to section 6M, allowing for amplified music on the patio at the Lions Bay General Store and Cafe from July 1st to September 30th, inclusive on weekends and public holidays during the hours of 12 to 9 p.m. I'll put that forward. Can I have a sign for a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Any discussion? Hand or icon? Going. There being none. All in favor, ayes. Nays opposed, please.
Aye.
Ayes are unanimous. Thank you very much, Mr. Doherty. You've got your exemption.
Thank you, council.
All right, thank you. Next piece of business is the resolution, which I'm going to switch screens for a second. Got everything right. So this is ministerial order, which is M192, resolution for council meetings, and the CAO sent this around earlier, and I have it here in front of me. It's far too long to read. And this is you. And his email was sent today before lunch. So if you're live and on the screen, you got a chance and you need to look at it, please take a second to do so. CAO, you have the court.
Okay, so this resolution is required under the new ministerial order that was issued last week, which replaced Order 139, which provided local governments with the ability to meet in open meeting without necessarily having the public present, and also provided for municipal and regional district governments to pass legislation in one sitting. So this replaces that, and it rescinds the ability to pass legislation in one sitting other than certain financial bylaws. But the gist and the biggest focus of the order is to direct local governments to do their best and to make the best efforts to provide for in-person public meetings to the extent possible, and where not possible, to pass a resolution such as this, explaining what steps the government is making to exert the best efforts to include the public, whether it be through online platforms such as the one we're on tonight and have been using for the last few months, the Zoom platform, and in providing for, so we have the ability to host up to 5 people in chambers, members of the public. Otherwise, they have the ability to take part and participate in the meetings through the electronic facilities that we've set up. And we're in the midst of upgrading those facilities, which we're trialing tonight. And there's a number of recommendations that are set out in the guidelines to the order, and which have been incorporated to the extent applicable in this resolution. So this resolution more or less outlines how we as a municipal government are taking steps to ensure that the public can participate in the process. And you'll see that in a lot of instances, the wording is that we will continue to do something or continue to provide for digital access or publishing of our agendas and our minutes and recordings and so forth. So we are already doing these things to the extent we can. We're going to continue to look for ways that we can expand those efforts. We will as well, as required by or as recommended by the guidelines to the order, establishing a safety plan for in-person meetings. So we'll be following the Worksafebc template for that, as you'll see elsewhere in the materials, same sort of idea, to ensure that staff, elected officials, and the public are safe to the extent that we can pursue that objective through the safety plan, and we will publish that on the website. There's also an admonition to seek where possible or where necessary the consideration of larger facilities if there are matters that are contentious or of great interest to the community. So that is something that we can keep in mind. Those facilities could be the hall. We would have to look at the technological requirements in order to simultaneously provide for digital access as well. But it could also include facilities outside the community. And so we will look at those options as well if it becomes necessary to do so. So this resolution basically meets the requirements of the order and is here because we don't have the ability to host as many people who want to walk through the door could walk through the door. We can't allow that because of the health requirements. So this is what we need to do in terms of satisfying the province that we're doing everything we can to ensure that our meetings are open, transparent, and accessible to as many people as possible.
Thank you very much, CAO. We'll get right to the point. So this is not a bylaw, so
It's a resolution.
it's a resolution to approve ministerial order M192, and that's resolution for council meetings. To get right to the discussion, I'll put that forward as a motion. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, and we'll go to discussion. I can tell you that in last Thursday's meeting with Minister Robinson, this came up as a very, it wasn't the top topic for sure, but it remains on the minds of several of the municipalities. And in the group that she's speaking with currently, before it's broken up into smaller units, it's from Abbotsford to pretty much Paul River. What their different councils do for meetings, it's to say they're all over the place would be an understatement. From my sense of the local mayors and their communities, given our resources, we have been on the leading edge of this almost since day one. And I think what we're doing with the cameras and the improved Zoom, and this fits right in, and I think it puts us in the top decile. That's my information on this, other than all the other communities keep asking about recovery of costs for doing this. Is there any chance for that, or is it something we're just sucking up?
We might be able to look at the MIA risk management grant, but I think we probably looked at that grant for a few different things.
Okay.
So might be a stretch, yeah.
Okay, I had to ask. All right, councillors, any other questions?
So yeah, I just got a question, Peter. So are these resolutions or these kind of different protocols and stuff now open-ended? Now, is that the idea? If they've stopped putting timelines on when things end and then things will change if they need to? Is that where we're going with this, in your opinion?
The way this is set up, the way this resolution is set up, is intended to apply to all council meetings until such time as we are once again able to open the doors and have as many people walk in the door to a council meeting as would like to. So it's permissible to set it up this way so that we don't have to pass this resolution for every meeting. It stands until it is amended or rescinded, is the idea.
So we could continue to behave this way through normal times if we choose.
To the extent that our procedure bylaw permits, and if you recall, we did amend the procedure bylaw at the beginning of the pandemic to provide for up to 4 councillors to attend a meeting electronically. So very much, like what we're doing right now, we could continue to do. However, if there's no longer a pandemic, then we could have a full gallery sitting behind us if they so chose. But the objectives and the way that the paragraphs of this resolution are worded is essentially stating that we're making best efforts to meet all of the objectives of the order as set out in the guidelines to the order, and that we will continue to look for ways that we can ensure that our meetings are open and transparent and accessible.
Okay, yeah, I think that answers my question. And the reason I ask is, working in the corporates, and we're now going back to work in a phased approach. Some companies are approaching it differently, but there seems to be some people that believe, the new normal should be the normal, and people shouldn't be encouraged to interact in a small space because people are going to have lingering fears about this. So I'm pleased to hear the option for people that are less comfortable going back to a new space because someone believes the old normal is back, will have the option to do so. I'm not suggesting that I'm one of those, but I certainly do meet people and work with people all day that are like that. I just don't know when they're going to want to be going back to work, so to speak.
Yeah,
So I guess what I'm asking is, we're allowing for that, and we're not going to be restricted to a timeline. And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think that that when that time comes, that council can certainly have a debate about the pros and cons of being present around the council table versus on a television screen. And that's a different debate, but certainly there are options going forward into the future. I can certainly agree with that statement.
Thank you.
I can too. I can't see the mayors driving to TransLink's global headquarters from the places they do when they've got choices to not. So there we go. Okay.
Before we move on, I just wanted to sort of perhaps pull a bit further on a string here, and that there's an opportunity to learn from what we're doing and the new technology that we've adopted, the way we can meet without having to commute and potentially burn fuel unnecessarily. So there is a lot of opportunity to improve the way we do things. And I know just from personal experience at our company, we're setting a % reduction in commuting because we have these tools that are at our disposal, and because it makes meeting easy, and it is an opportunity for us to save on commuting.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Cormier. Any other questions before I call a motion? There being none, I will call a motion. All in favor, ayes. Nays opposed, please.
Aye.
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 Good, unanimous, thank you. Okay, which moves us to item number 6, which is review and approval of minutes of the prior meeting, which is June 2nd, 2020, which is on page 9 of your package. I have no changes or amendments. If you do, please don't use your hand, let's just speak up. This could be a first.
Sorry, I was just a bit slow there.
It's good to see you smiling, Councillor Abbott.
Page 16, right at the top. The motion about the extra bylaw, I didn't go check how it was read and written. I'm not disputing necessarily this was how it was read and written. But my recollection of the meeting is that we thought these 12.5 hours or surplus hours would be spent midweek outside of the normal weekend shifts that are planned. I think that was the general consensus. I'm not sure if it was read that way, but if everyone agrees with me, I think it should be reflected that way in the minutes.
Councillor?
That's how I recollect it as well.
I'm not sure where we are.
Oh, it's up at page 15.
16.
It's just
16.
16.
God, my eyesight is terrible. Thank you. Okay, good. Got it.
And
Councillor
Abbott, could you quickly go over that again?
I think where it's recorded, maybe how it was read and approved and voted on. However, the discussion, I think generally people thought these hours should be spent on intermittent, unscheduled, well, not unscheduled, intermittent, ad hoc bylaw enforcement during the week outside of the weekend shifts. Can we record that in the minutes as the discussion if we can't change the way it was read?
yeah, I think the intent was to apply it, I think if we said comma, preferably midweek to the extent feasible or something like that.
Yeah, I'll be happy with that.
Good, done. Please make the change. Anything else, Councillor Abbott?
No, I'm good.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Yeah, if I could add one. On page 18, item number 4, Kelvin Grove cliff jumping and bonfires. The first bullet point I'm a little concerned about. It's just, this is no big deal, but it said nothing's preventing someone from having a campfire outside municipal boundaries. Well, it's not entirely true. Flynn Row and Coastal Fire Service can have bans in place. Now, maybe I'm just parsing words here, I suppose, but we're almost implying by the minutes that it's a free-for-all out there, and it isn't quite, but it's getting close.
So perhaps we could say, comma, subject to Coastal Fire Center campfire bans?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, thank you. So amended. Anybody else? Okay, there being none, I'll put forward the motion to accept the agenda as amended. I have a seconder. Take that as a yes, thank you. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor, ayes, nays, opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And item number 7, business arising from the minutes. The only piece back to the fires that Councillor Bein was talking about, and I guess the last bullet point on the top of page 18 was that the CAO was going to liaise with the chief and the CN. I know that the CN people are here when we make the call or ask that they are here. So I would just emphasize that the CAO and the chief continue their dialogue on this. Is that fair enough, CAO? Yeah, thank you very much. Any other business arising?
Yeah, I'll just mention in the business arising on page 17, item number 3, candidate post service levels, that I know there's been lots of correspondence and a further update later. I did meet with Mr. Doty. Not sure there's anything we need to discuss now as part of this meeting. He outlined a plan. I believe I tried to, in parallel, meet with the local inspector. She turned down my request, and I believe the two of them, and I know from further correspondence, they have continued to meet. So I think we can leave it at that and see what else develops and how it plays out. But I just want to let everyone know that I did reach out, meet with Mr. Doty, as well as reach out to the post office staff as suggested.
Just mentions coming up. Norm's going to talk about it.
Okay. Councillor Barmeyer is going to speak about this later on.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. There being no other business arising, unless there's a hand shoots up. Nope. Okay, then we will move on to unfinished business, and there are the action items. Number 104, currently, actually it's kind of a good news story for the first time we can relay on this. Our person who is in the province and is our go-to person on the highway is trying to get us to move faster. We're just not in a position to do it just now. So I'm taking this as the first bright light on this thing in a long, long time. So that's the latest on that. On the item number 127 on the electronic building submissions.
Got nothing to report.
Nothing. And for items number 133, 134, and 135, those are all done. And the one with Mayor Vagromoff, we did that on Friday. Thank you very much, Carla, for that. So we are done across the board there. Which brings us to reports. And the first one is staff report, my CFO.
May I suggest that perhaps we should jump to the filming?
Oh, sorry, thank you.
Just because we've got people waiting.
Yep, okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. DeJohn. Okay, I'm not sure what the hearing is, but we're going to move to filming. We'll hold off.
There might be something going on with the audio. Is that just on my end?
Could you not hear when I was just speaking, or?
There's sort of reverberation, and I'm just curious that maybe it's just me.
Anybody else having that sensation?
Every now and then, Ron, you're getting a little garbled, but
Yeah.
really good.
garbled. It sounds like you're speaking into a bit of a pipe at points there. Maybe just the placement of the video, or I don't know.
Okay, well, the sound piece was down the table to accommodate Mr. Doherty, so it's closer to me now. So if there's changes, please shoot your hand up if it's garbled again. Thank you very much for bringing it to our attention. Okay, so filming application at the beach park and CAO, and we have a guest online as well. Mr. DeJong, it's yours.
Okay. So this is an application for a filming application by Charming Productions and for a film project, Kite Festival of Love. The request is for filming in the Lions Bay Beach Park with setup on June 25, filming on the 26th, the 29th, and the 30th while the park is closed. Of course, later in the meeting, council will be debating whether or not the park is going to open, and if so, on July 1st is the recommendation that you'll be looking at. So this would be prior to that time. The applicants actually have, knowing that we were kind of working with those timelines for our own recommendations on the park, tried to accommodate by moving their schedule forward. So that's why we're seeing a split, the 25, 26, and then the weekend off, and then coming back on the 29, 30 to finish up. So parking is to be in the Lions Bay Beach Park lot with about 4 work trucks and I think roughly 15 vehicles, but I'll let Mr. Van Deusen correct me if I'm wrong on that once I'm done. Hours are daytime filming, so in the summertime that's 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. There's a request for exemption from the noise control bylaw, but the filming itself is not expected to have much in the way of loud noises or explosions or anything like that. Again, I'll let Mr. Van Deusen clarify in respect of expected noise levels. There's the usual provisions in the recommendation in respect of the fire department and hydrants, filming fees, and are in accordance with our schedule under the new filming policy. And neighbor notification letter was sent out, was delivered to residents, affected residents in the neighborhood. So normally, under staff's interpretation of the new filming policy, this would be an occasion when, let's say for instance, this application was for a house on Lions Bay Avenue. We would be looking at this as 3 days or less of filming, and we would be looking at a neighbor notification letter, 1 week's response time for me to review that feedback and to make a decision on granting or not granting the permit. Because we're dealing with a beach park which has been closed by order under the park bylaw at the direction of council, this needed to come to council. We also are dealing with tight timelines, as I understand it. The film industry has just been given the green light to begin filming operations, and so they're anxious to get going. So we didn't have much lead time, but to the extent possible, we have tried to ensure that people have been notified. And I've spoken with one resident who's not online tonight, and emailed with another resident who is, so she may have a comment. And the recommendations, so the recommendation is that the permit be granted for the dates in question. I think it's an opportunity that fits nicely within a very narrow window for us in terms of the park being closed. and the opportunity to do something like this prior to it being open. I think it would be very difficult to entertain something like this in pre-pandemic times or post-pandemic times. But I think we find ourselves in a unique position to be able to consider this. And from the information that has been attached to the application before you, the contention and the submission is that satisfactory efforts have been made in order to address potential concerns with the filming, and that to the extent possible, impacts have been mitigated or will be mitigated, and concerns of residents, I trust, will be met. And I think that's about all I need to say for the moment, unless there are questions.
Mr. Van Deusen, anything to add?
Well, first off, thanks for having me. The only thing I could add is there will probably be about 20 more cars, and we did request to park along the lane of Lions Bay Ave. Our circus will be off-site, so you don't have to worry about that. We did request possibly to have the washrooms open, and if not, we will bring our own. So just let us know about that. I think that our crew's small enough of only like 30 people, and that we're restricted to just a small little area, that I don't see that there'll be an impact on the community at all. And I have had some neighbors contact me, and I did state that if there is any impact to their home at all, that they can feel free to contact me, and I have no problem to negotiate with them a way to make everybody happy.
Thank you very much. Actually, let's keep on with the questions now then, before we go to the motion. That way we can involve both the CAO and Mr. Van Deusen. Any councillors, any questions? Councillor Bein?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Abbott, I see you're on hold after Councillor Bein.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering about the closest neighbors, if they're on board with this or if they have any reservations.
Okay, so I have spoke to the neighbor directly next door. He has offered his driveway as well as his small little beach home for us to use for our actors. We will be compensating him. Any neighbors that we feel we do need to work with, we're there to work with them and to compensate them as well. But like I said, our crew is very small, so I don't feel that we'll be branching out any further than just that first house, the parking, and the park.
Talking about the Simons' house or the other?
Mr. Van Deusen's referring to Mr. Stone's property.
Gotcha.
Just on the opposite side of the street from the Simons. I did receive some concerns from Ruth Simons in respect of the proposed filming. She asked a number of questions, and at the end of the day, her summary was that they support the film application provided none of the above noises, and she's referencing noises from generators and amplified music, car doors slamming, people talking loudly, that kind of thing, and loud noises from the beach park. That none of those noises occur before 7 a.m. or after 10 p.m. and that there's consideration demonstrated for noise from the parking lot to our house above at all times, i.e. park the generator at the end of the parking lot. Generator noise is not interfering with our work. Arrival and departure noise is kept to a minimum outside of daylight filming hours. She also wondered about who to call during, after office hours if there was a problem. And as I understand it, there is a production liaison person as well. Sounds like Mr. Van Deusen would be happy to take her call and to ensure that her concerns or the concerns of any other similarly situated residents are addressed promptly.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbott, you're next up.
Yeah, so my questions were probably along the same lines. The CEO had mentioned some residents, and we hadn't heard what their feedback was. So I take it to mean there was no negative resident, there was no resident raising an objection?
I did have a phone call, like I stated, and he first off just came and stated that he wanted compensation. That was his first overall thing. So like I stated to him, and like how I handle all my clients in film is, if we do bother you, please contact us on the day of, and I have no problem handling it with compensation or any way we feel like it's agreeable between all parties.
Okay. And Peter, you heard no negative in that, no negative response other than what you mentioned about Mrs. Simons, Ms. Simons?
Being Councillor.
Who's got her hand up? It's up to you guys if you want to.
Well, thank you very much. Councillor Abbott, are you concluded?
Sure.
Thank you. Being counseled by my crack staff here, it's somewhat unusual, but we will bring in a member of the public. May have a question, or we'll go with that. So Ruth, if you could unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you for making exception. I just want a clarification. When I heard you say that, Garrett, that the neighbor next door to the beach park,
Yes, ma'am.
would be allowing you use of the space, and you were compensating them, that's
Yes.
different than the neighbor across the street from me, which is Mr. Stone. So I just here, are you compensating?
Whoever's home is directly next to the beach,
Right.
that has the beach house connected to the beach,
Yeah.
with the little walkway,
Yeah.
that's who my assistant has spoken with, and
Okay.
we have given rights to the rented parking lot and the beach space from them. So it's not as a compensation for just being there, but it's due to renting a space from them.
Gotcha. Okay, I just, because I'd heard somebody say the name of my neighbor across the street from me, and that's why I put my hand up, because that would be really new information.
Sorry, that was my mistake and misunderstanding, Ruth.
Okay. All right. And I just want to thank you that I've been in touch with Celeste, but I didn't hear the word noise from generator. But you've got my concerns, and Celeste has assured me that you're not going to be placing the generator. Didn't think so, right in the parking lot below our house. So.
No, we'll definitely muffle any noise of the generator, put it as far away as possible. Also put our trucks around it so that the trucks will muffle the noise from any home.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, I'm Darren. I'm the production manager / producer. We technically have no generator. We're using a Honda 7,000 watt hot putt, which is ultra quiet to run anything at set. Our trucks that are going to be offset have a generator. But we literally have no generator running anything at set.
Right.
A big generator anyway.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robson. Ruth, are you concluded?
I am. Good luck.
Thank you. Hand down, please. Councillor Abbott, your hand is up.
Sorry, you're having a technical problem. My hand is not meant to be up. I meant to put it down. I didn't put it up again. There you go.
All right, well, we'll take it as a...
Chair and the keyboard.
Okay, well, you're back up again.
With big fingers.
All right. Are you trying to play with me?
Consider it down. There you go.
Find a plane.
All right, council members, any other questions you have? The only one, because my mind is small and cluttered, and if I hear the word food truck one more time, I think we're being swarmed with food trucks somewhere during this period. Help me with my memory, CAO.
That would be for July 1st in the parking lot.
Just the first, not the
30th.
Thank you. Yeah. Not any of those dates. Okay, I thought we would have, in the true meeting, I thought we'd have a bun fight there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And at this point, it looks like the crew is bringing their own washrooms. Or are we talking about that later?
I think that why don't you leave that for
With you?
us to
Okay.
work out with the applicant as to whether or not we can make that work.
Okay.
On the washroom story. And just to clarify, Mr. Van Deusen, so at one point in time, there had been a conversation about a couple of trailers to accommodate actors, but that's no longer in the picture, correct?
No, we're gonna park that off-site. So.
Right, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you very much. All right, council members, we'll go another second or two for any more questions that you have from our outside guests or from the CAO. Okay, we're going to go no. Okay, we'll do this in a slightly different order then. So on the matter of the filming application for Lions Bay Beach Park, the staff recommendation, which I'm putting this forward, that the film permit application for Kite Festival of Love be approved subject to the following conditions. I don't have enough breath to go through A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. I'll put that forward, that motion, and along with item number 2, that the CAO be authorized to sign any filming permit or other incidental documentation. So it's a motion on 2 points. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? There being none, call a motion. All in favor, ayes. Nays opposed, please.
Aye.
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 There you go, Mr. Van Deusen, and you have your unanimous yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
We'll be in touch tomorrow.
Thanks for coming to the village. Okay. And so we will go back to that. Thank you. Thank you very much, CAO, for comprehensive work. Back to staff reports.
Thank you. If she's still there, Ms. Haley Cook, for pulling this all together. It's not me who deserves any accolades on this. It is she who has managed to work through this in a very short time frame. So thanks, Haley.
The film queen, thank you very much.
Thanks, Haley.
Thank you, Haley. So staff reports, item A, and this is the CFO update on EV grant application. And why don't we get the procedure out of the way first? The staff recommendation is that council authorize the CFO to sign the proof of funding letter for the electric vehicle and alternate fuel infrastructure development initiative, confirming that the village of Lions Bay will contribute the amount of $50,000 towards the Lions Bay Fast EV Charger project. To get this going, I'll put forward the motion. Can I have a seconder? And we'll go to discussion. Thank you, seconder. Okay, discussion starts and your report goes now.
So as you know, through the budget process and going back to the council resolution from last year, Councillor Baumier and I have been working on a application. It's essentially a grant application for a DC fast charging station. It's a bit of an unusual grant application in that it's open to the public as well as government. So because of that, we're required to indicate in a funding letter that I sign as the CFO that we have $50,000 to put towards the project. But the plan is that we will get a 50% federal grant, a 25% provincial grant, which you apply for at the same time as the federal grant. And then we would fund 25%, which is $25,000. And we have budgeted for that 25. So I did reach out to the grant, the federal government about this, basically saying that we could do a funding letter saying that we're willing to, that we are able to contribute 50,000, but if we were successful with the federal portion and not the provincial portion, we would not proceed with the project. And they were okay with that, because another unusual thing about this grant is once you, if you are successful and they're informing you that you're getting the 50,000 funding, you have a couple of months to sign what's called a contribution agreement with Natural Resources Canada. And if we were only successful with the federal portion, then we just wouldn't sign the contribution agreement. So my understanding, the provincial portion, it's not a separate application. You just indicate on the federal grant application that you want to be considered for the provincial funding, but it's a separate decision, and it's based on it's based on the funding envelope and just the merits of the application. But we would find out at the same time if we were successful with the provincial. So it's just a bit of an unusual requirement that we have to sign this funding letter in order to be considered, but we don't have to proceed unless we get both the federal and the provincial funding. So, is there any questions?
Councillors, any questions?
Yeah, I didn't have a question. I just had a comment, but I think you kind of answered it. We started off hoping for a 100% grant. Then we had a 80-20% grant, and 20% was going to be in kind out of the workshop. That was a plan. Now we could be at 50-50. But if it is 50-50 or anything less than 80-20, it's obviously got to come back to council for us to do another approval, because that's not what we agreed in the budget. So that's basically what you're saying, Pam?
Yes, we actually have 25,000 in the budget. We had 5,000 from the prior year, and then we put 20,000 in this year for the 75. Yeah, it was a bit confusing over the 100%. It's a very unusual grant. They say that municipal governments can get up to 100%, but what they mean is, because it's open to the private sector, you're only allowed to have a maximum of 75% government funding, which would be 25% provincial and 50% federal. And then you're expected to come up with the $25,000 yourself. But because the $25,000 would come from us and we're a municipal government, they consider that 100% government funding, even though we're really putting up the $25,000 ourselves. It took me a long time to get my mind around that. So 100% was actually never available, where every participant is expected to put up at least 25%. And private companies that apply for this are actually have to repay the grant over 10 years. But because we're a municipal government, we don't have that requirement. We don't have to repay the $50,000.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, I guess, yeah, so as it stands, we hope to get 75%. We're going to agree to put in this grant application that commits us to 50%. But if we didn't get the other 25 and we only got the 50, then it would have to go back to council for another approval, even though you've already agreed in the grant that we have it. Because council never approved going 50-50.
Exactly.
We're not doing that by this resolution is what I'm saying.
That's correct. In fact, I would go as far to say I'm not sure it would come back to council for the 50,000. Council has directed staff that we would only contribute up to 25. So we just wouldn't proceed if we didn't get the provincial portion.
Fair enough. Thanks. That's the clarification I was looking for.
Okay.
Any other questions? Everybody knows that what we're getting into here. CFO's explained that it's a larger number than we thought, but there's an exit door if it doesn't work out. All right, there being no further questions, I'm calling the motion. All in favor, ayes. Nays opposed, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Unanimous ayes. Thank you very much, CFO. Next one is, let's have the staff, well, it's on page 33. This is the subject is the Tides Canada changes its name to Makeway, and that's on page 33 of your package. And the staff recommendation is that the information report Tides Canada changes its name to Makeway be received. I'll put forward that motion. Can I have a seconder? I need a seconder. Thank you. Any discussion on this?
I have one question. Why is this coming to us as a sort of like, who cares if they change their name, if I can be so blunt? And why wouldn't that just be in correspondence? I don't understand why it's in this section of the reports.
Well, it was just a matter of correspondence. However, I certainly didn't have a clue what it was all about, and didn't remember that we had this donation agreement in effect for 3 years, and so the correspondence that came in did not have the additional information you see here with respect to Ocean Watch Task Force and so forth. So I would have remembered at that point what it was, but the way it came in was just, it was something that I thought bore a little bit of a refresher. So I just thought, I asked Haley to just pull together the relevant information, just as a reminder to council, and that commitment will be expiring at the end of this year. I'm not sure what the status of the project is or whether there'll be a further ask after that, but I just thought it was a good opportunity to provide council with a reminder of it, and I think some of you may not have seen it before, so that's why I did it that way.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, then I'll call a motion. All in favor of the report being received? Ayes, nays opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And to Haley who did this, and she's still on. There we go. Okay, and then we move quickly on to the main course of the evening, which is, with the renumbering, it's item 9.4, which is the staff request for decision, policy 20.04, strategic plan for reopening municipal facilities, increasing or adjusting municipal services during the COVID-19 pandemic. It starts on page 49 of your package, and I'm breaking this down into several pieces here. And the first one we will deal with is item 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I will put forward the motion and ask for a seconder on that, and then we'll go to discussion. So my motion will be that council approves items 1, 2, 3, 4. I have a motion. I'm the motion. Can I have a second, please? Any indication? Members, wave, blink. I need a hand. Thank you. All right, we are in discussion, and CAO, this is yours. Can you cover this, please?
Okay. I don't want to obviously go through this in too much detail, or we'd be here all night. So I'll just touch on a few things. The intent here is to provide council with an overview, more or less a strategic plan in relation to reopening municipal facilities and adjusting service levels as necessary, if necessary. And the recommendations of legal counsel are to provide this kind of overview and the policies that are a necessary part of the entire package for council as a policy. There are, as you probably remember, advantages of ensuring that council addresses things by way of policies, provides the municipality with a defense if the reasons for doing something a certain way are at some point in time attacked as being insufficient or inadequate. And a policy defense says council has considered the matter and the issues pertaining to the matter and weighed the pros and cons, taken into account certain things that as a political body you do, such as the best interests of the community, economic considerations, socio-demographic and considerations, and those sorts of things in determining how we will move forward in any given particular area related to a policy. So this has been set up as a policy, and then within it we've got policies dealing with the interim employment policy, which is missing a T in the word adopted, says adopt. And that was something that we had to address immediately when the pandemic struck, to ensure that our employees were taken care of, that they would not be incentivized in any way to attend the workplace with any kind of symptoms because they didn't have sickness benefits, for instance. We have a wide range of circumstances for our small staff, in that some are part-time essentially and don't have full benefits, and some are not. So we followed pretty much on the heels of what other municipalities were doing. Other municipalities were much greater impacted than we were in terms of their facilities that they had to shut down, the staff that they had to lay off. And so in some respects, we were quite fortunate in that respect because we have such a lean, efficient employee staff machine that we needed everybody to continue working to get through everything that was coming at us. So actually, our policy is essentially a stopgap for anyone who needs it until such time as they could access federal or provincial benefits, which at that time were just in the process of being developed and coming out every other day, it seemed at the time. That policy was enacted essentially as an administrative policy. It was provided to the union, and feedback was received from the union. We made a few tweaks, and then beyond that, haven't really touched it since then. That was a couple months ago. The next thing that came along was the need immediately to determine that we couldn't have everybody in the office. It couldn't be business as usual. And so we determined who would work in the office and who would work remotely from home, or such other locations as was appropriate for them, and gradually pulled together what you see before you now as the COVID-19 interim remote workplace policy number 20.03. And that draws on materials from other municipalities, as well as from Worksafebc, as well as some historical work that I had done quite some time ago with the SLRD when I was at the regional district. The fourth item in this part one of policies that you have before you that we're looking at right now is the Village of Lions Bay COVID-19 Workplace Safety Plan. And that is something that came about more recently as a requirement from Worksafebc, reinforced by an order of the public health officer that everybody's got to have these. They're being implemented not just for local governments, but for businesses and all kinds of different areas of the economy and society. So as I mentioned earlier, in respect of our resolution dealing with the Ministerial Order 192 and how we do business for council meetings, that's another spot where we're going to be creating a workplace safety plan specifically for council chambers and open meetings. So they are pervasive now, and basically required us to drill down and do risk hazard assessments on each of our facilities and the manner in which we perform our tasks, and where we have contacts, surface contacts, and other risks that present themselves, look at ways to mitigate those risks, look at how we will gradually open to the public, and how we will mitigate the risks of contact with the public. So we have a plexiglass barrier that's been installed in the office, and other procedures that you see within the materials dealing with mitigation of the risks that have been identified. So for each one of those areas, we do an assessment, a hazard risk assessment, as per the diagram that you see on page 88 of the materials, and then the inverted triangle on the following page identifies the levels of protection that we go through in terms of mitigating the risks that we have identified. And this is a process that we will continue. We've begun the process. We've worked through things for the office, and Nai's been working through things for the Public Works Yard. We will do the same thing for the CLAP building, a little more complicated there with several different entities operating out of that building. So we haven't tackled that one yet, but these are all things that we need to do. And so we will continue to flesh out the workplace safety plans as they pertain to each of our workplace environments, and how we interact with each other and with the public. And so from pages, say 97 through 101, you can see that that's more or less the Worksafebc checklist that people are advised to go through and make sure that you're addressing those items contained within the checklist to the extent they pertain to your organization. So within that, there are things like having a remote workplace, remote working policy, having a working alone policy, which is the next one that we're working on now. But we've always had sort of more or less informal protocols with respect to working alone, but we're taking the step now of formalizing that. So we'll have something coming down the pike on that in due course. At the bottom of each section, the bolded text you see is things that we have done in respect of some of the measures that are identified in the checklist. And then the pages that follow, you might recognize the Village of Lions Bay COVID-19 Office Protocols and Procedures diagram. Oh, we just lost connection.
We'll come back. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. There we go.
We can still see you fine.
Could you hear me while we were?
Yeah.
We can see and hear you, actually.
Okay, all right. Well, for us, the screen went blank, and
You're just showing off the.
I was just showing the. I don't know if you could see it, but I was holding up the poster that is sort of premised on our strategic planning poster, and that's on page. I guess it must be 106 of the materials, and just an idea of some of the things that we've identified, the high-touch surfaces that we have reminders throughout the office to remind ourselves to constantly be cleaning and sanitizing and washing our hands and all those good things. Followed by there's operating procedures as to how we do things, including cleaning the vehicles and all those kinds of things. So it's an ongoing process, and it's been a fair bit of work, but we're making good headway, and we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So that's more or less it in sort of pretty much lightning speed, going through the items that have been identified for consideration by council as one lump some as part one of the staff report. Just sort of recapping a couple things on in the report. There's reference to specific service standards. So these are things that we are now looking at in terms of how we do business and how we do our tasks. There are things that we have to look at in terms of we are looking at reopening facilities. So for washrooms, for example, there are guidelines and protocols that we need to, we're waiting for a while, and then that we need to follow now, put out by BC Center for Disease Control and Vancouver Coastal Health. And just because it's not anywhere in these materials, I'm going to bring it up now. There was some question as to what kind of standards would apply to a porta potty. So previously we have, last year for instance, put a porta potty at the top of the Sunset Trailhead. And we didn't do that to begin with this year over concerns of the COVID situation. We now have some direction from Vancouver Coastal Health as to appropriate protocols for a porta potty to a minimum standard, that it be cleaned at least once a week or sanitized once a week, which is more or less the rotation. So every week, the company that we rent the porta potty from will come out, pump it out, sanitize it, restock it, and we've met our requirement. So we don't need to have staff or an independent contractor hired to address that. So we do have the option of proceeding with that at the trailhead as one of the things that council ought to have on your plate. Maybe add it to the things that we're looking at reopening or proceeding with. And I don't have, do you have the financial cost of that? I don't remember what it was last year.
I'll stand to be corrected by the CFO, but I believe it's $275 a month.
I had 300 in my mind.
That's about right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a big cost, and we have had some correspondence on that particular issue in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I guess as hiking takes off, there's more and more evidence that it's something that's needed. So put that out there as a suggestion that we proceed with that program again.
CAO, I would propose to keep, I've made a note that when we talk about parking, I'll bring up the porta potties too. Thank you.
All right. So
Councillor Abbott has a question.
Pardon me?
Councillor Abbott has a question.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. So a couple of kind of observations or questions. In the report, it talks about employees without creating program for employees without benefits. So just remind me, employees without benefits in our case, is that the bylaw officers or is there more?
No, there's substantially more. There's our part-time Deputy Emergency Program Coordinator. There is our part-time Administrative Assistant. And there is our part-time Building Inspector. Who else am I missing? Anybody?
That's pretty much it. Bylaw officers,
Yeah.
Robert, Susan, and Dave.
Yeah, so it's about 4 or 5 in total.
Okay. So what does that look like then, Peter? I mean, what a special program have we created for these non-full-time or non-regular employees?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but
What benefits?
Well, the statement says,
Oh, what benefits?
we
Sorry.
establish a program for
Yeah.
identify employees at risk and those without benefits. So what's the, how we identified employees without benefits differently? What are we doing?
You want me to answer?
Is there anything we need to do differently? It implies that other employees can take sick leave, have those kind of circumstances, but what do we say to those without benefits?
Yeah, the employees that didn't have benefits, what we said we would do is if they had to quarantine, it was early on, if they had to self-quarantine because of exposure, or if they did get sick with COVID, that we would pay up, they would continue to pay their salary for up to 2 weeks. So we would essentially give them 2 weeks of sick time, because all of the other employees had sick time. And there were a variety of reasons for doing that, but one of them was also we didn't want people coming into work when they shouldn't, just because they couldn't afford to stay home. So there were a few motivations, but basically they were given up to 2 weeks sick time for anything COVID related, including having to self-quarantine.
Okay.
And just as a follow-up on that, it's only been called upon to a very, very limited extent.
Just a few days. Just a few days.
Yeah, just a few days in total for the program to date. So it's just a stopgap that was we felt was necessary and was in line with more or less what everybody else was doing. Actually, the benefits that were being provided to others were quite a bit more complete. They were, a lot of them were 6 weeks of paid leave for a lot of the employees that had been laid off in the North Shore, for example. So we, as I mentioned, were fortunate not to be in that situation, and created a program that met the needs of our municipality and its employees, so that everybody was protected and would be safe going forward.
Okay, thanks. So just for context, currently in these in the procedures you've identified so far, the areas you've addressed, it's the village office, public works yard, haven't dealt with the hall or the portions of it that could be accessed by public, and we haven't addressed the CLAT building so far. Is that a summary?
Yeah, Broughton Hall, CLAT building haven't been addressed yet.
You're on page 57.
Sorry, is that what page you're on? 57?
I'm not on a particular page. From memory of what we've discussed and what you read and what I saw previously.
I'm sure it must be very hard when you're virtually flipping through all this stuff, because I'm having a hard time hard copy.
So is your question more or less?
I was going to phrase another, I had a question that I was going to ask, but I just want to put it in context. It's around washrooms and things. So these procedures we've got so far, what I understand, it's the village office, it's the public works yard largely, the places inhabited by the staff. And specifically this cleaning once every time you use it, all these protocols, they do not address the hall, which we haven't got to yet, and I don't know if we're going to get to, and they do not necessarily address how people behave in the CLAT building.
Correct.
Correct, okay. And so what I was asking, what I'm looking for is understanding a program to enforce these things, because I've done much of this in my life, living in camps, big construction sites, working the corporates, and people start off with good intention and they probably obey them for the first few weeks. And when I read these things and I look at people wiping down trucks every time the driver changes, I look at people wiping down washrooms every time they use it, I can, it's onerous. I doubt doubt most people in the village office tonight intend to get up and wipe down the table that they sat at or the computer they used. These are all the things we suggest we do. And the only way to do it well, or to get anywhere near the sort of standard you've laid out here, is a program of encouragement, if not enforcement. So have you looked at that? Do you have a plan for how you're going to measure success against what is a very detailed and very challenging program to follow?
To be honest, no, I have not yet had an opportunity to think about how we're going to measure success or ensure that we don't start sloughing off on these things. It's been, you know, all we could do to this point to pull this all together and bring this package that you see before you now, and to pull together these policies and procedures has been a lot of work. So no, we haven't taken the next step yet about ensuring that we are constantly encouraged to follow these procedures and to enforce these procedures. But certainly that, I agree, that is something that we will need to do.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Cunliffe, you're next up.
Well, just to speak briefly to what Neville's point was, all of these practices that you've put together, Peter, good job. This is exactly what's been put in place where I've worked. Wiping down of surfaces, keeping door handles, everything, but it's not really a measure of success. It's holding each other accountable as colleagues and just being respectful to each other's personal safety. So I have faith that you guys all will be able to do that. But to circle back to the porta potties, actually, which was my main point, we aren't providing water to wash hands, and once a week is the minimum. Are we providing like hand sanitizers? And how
Yes.
often how often is that being replenished? Is once a week going to be enough? It's just one of my comments, and we can discuss it again, I guess, when we're talking about other things, but that's just what struck me.
Councillor Cunliffe, I've got this on my notepad. If we can bring the porta potties plus this piece back to the parking area.
Yeah, I failed to mention that there will be sanitizer in the porta potty too. Nine was getting all the details today, actually. That's right, Nine? I don't know what size they provide, but.
That's correct. They do provide sanitizer, and they'll refill it once a week. If it depletes before the once a week, there'll be a notice on the door to phone, and we can go in there and replenish it.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. Again, we'll bring this up again at the parking piece, because so for the council members, think about where you'd like the porta potties and the number, and any other questions relative to disclaimers or stuff like that. Councillor Barmier.
At the risk of sounding like a broken record, I'd like to just understand number 3, the interim remote workplace policy. Peter, would that come back at some point for us to either get rid of it or revisit it at some point down the road?
I think that it's certainly something that I want to revisit at some point down the road. There are aspects to having a workplace policy that go towards some of the perspectives that Councillor Abbott was bringing up in relation to the other policy, and that is following up to ensure that what you're doing is on track, that you're succeeding at what your objectives are, and so tailoring that, ensuring that it's working, and then tailoring it to changing circumstances as we go along is certainly something that I'm looking forward to.
I think more specifically the remote workplace policy, I guess what I'm driving at here is that I think there's an opportunity for us to evolve in the way we meet, in the way we commute. And, you know, in fact, we could probably take some measurable action here and have a policy that, you know, enforces a % reduction in fossil fuel intensive commuting, or in some way promotes carbon neutral commuting. So I think we have an opportunity here to learn as a municipality and become more efficient. So I just don't want us to lose track of that. I think that this interim remote workplace policy could be advanced and make us a greener municipality.
I think that that's probably a good talking point to include in the Climate Action Committee agenda that you and Councillor Kana will be pulling together. So yeah, I agree.
Of course you would. There you go. There you go. Thank you very much. Councillor Cunliffe, your hand stayed up. I don't know if you put it up again. Thank you. Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, I did put mine up again. One of the things that just came to mind, pleased that we're going to put some plan in place to enforce this and measure some KPIs and make sure we're successful. The other thing that's happening, certainly in my industry, probably in most, I'm now, you know, in phase 2A of my company, given my age and what I need to do to start going back to work. But every day before I arrive at work, I have to go online to a survey and declare that I haven't traveled, that I am healthy. It's a series of questions, standard questions you would have seen on, you know, the BC assessment. I have to do that every day. Should probably think of doing something like that. It's another reinforcement thing that just makes people think. And so we don't get back into our old days of, hey, it was tough to go to work with a cold because I can shake it off. We don't want to go back there. And so most industries are putting these in place, and I think we should think of doing that as well. Simple survey, 3 questions. You do it on your way into work, or I guess we could do it as soon as you get to work if you need to, because maybe not everyone's got computers and iPhones.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Abbott, hand down, please. Thank you. I can tell you that as recent as seems like yesterday, 45 days ago, when Councillor Abbott and I did the CAO's performance and merit format, COVID, I don't know how it slipped the top 10, but it did. Councillor Abbott, what were we thinking? And it certainly wasn't in the strategic plan that we had. And a lot of things have taken a lot of time. This is real pioneering work. And I know that you can stitch and cut some stuff, but I think to make it applicable to our community, the CAO deserves just a resounding thank you on behalf of all of us. This is complete time doing a project that is important, but up until the event occurred, it wasn't on the radar. So it took an awful lot of it has taken a lot of his time, and it's going to take more of his time. So thank you very much, CAO, for your work on all of this stuff to date. Any other questions before I call the motion on this first section? I will call the motion now. All those in favor, and that says just to itemize on your page 3 of your agenda, item 4, and that's items 1, 2, 3, and 4. All in favor, ayes, nays, opposed, please.
Aye.
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 Okay, unanimous, and thank you again very much. Which brings us to the next piece, and I'm going to ask staff for a little bit of guidance in this one, mostly because I've been told by Carla that my flipping of paper causes great irritation in the non-room area. And okay, the little tiny little notes I'm getting, I feel like the Prime Minister. So I think on this one, this is item number 5, which is a separate section. I will put forward this motion and I'll look for a second, but I'm going to go back to the CAO and ask him to make references to the pages that he's talking about on this. And I think in terms of the opening there's a lot of information in a short number of pages here, and I don't want to be jumping back and forth. So for this particular motion, everything to do with parking is not in this. It's in the next one that's going to come up. So just to recap, the facility reopening plans attached to the request for decision report, Village of Lions Bay strategic plan for reopening municipal facilities and increasing or adjusting municipal services during the COVID-19 pandemic, issued for the June 23rd, 2020 regular council meeting, be approved. I'll put forward that motion. Can I have a second? We'll go to discussion. Thank you. Seconded, and going to discussion. And I'll let you lead us through this, Mr. DeJong.
Yeah, so I am going to jump around a little bit, so my apologies on that. This ended up going in alphabetical order versus the list on page 50, which is not in alphabetical order and begins with the village office. So if you go to page 131 of the agenda, that's the one dealing with village office reopening service adjustment plan. So it outlines what the current status is. We've been closed with limited access by appointment, and some staff are allocated between the office and remote workplaces, as I alluded to, and we're using technology to access our files remotely and to meet electronically. So we have a Zoom meeting every Monday morning for our staff meeting, for example, and sometimes on Thursdays if we've had a council meeting that week. So we've done a hazard risk assessment in terms of the number of contacts, and that includes both interpersonal as well as surface contacts. We've attempted to go through the methods of protection, beginning with elimination, and we do that through occupancy limits and remote working. And so the occupancy limit on this one, I did send around an example via email to council earlier. And so for this one, the village office occupancy limit would be 8. That includes one person standing in the reception area, the receptionist, Carla on the other side of the wall, Pam across in her area, me if I happen to be in there. And then bylaw officers, if it's a Friday, for example, there could be both of them coming and going during the day, so there's 7. And then if we're fully in there,
Resident.
Pardon me?
A resident.
I already counted the resident in the front reception area.
Just one?
Yeah, but that resident is in there at the counter, and lo and behold, the courier comes. So now we got 8. So happens all the time.
Gotcha.
So, and other steps we've taken are the plexiglass barrier at the front desk, and we've just installed a audio-video intercom system. So you push the button, it rings the bell, and it opens the app on the person's phone at the reception desk. And so, for example, Karen will open her phone, she can see who it is standing outside and ask them what they would like, and tell them to enter, or tell them that they need to wait because there's somebody at the counter. Please stand back, wait behind the line, that kind of thing. People will exit the building to the left, close to the building, walk around. People will line up. If there is a lineup to pay taxes, for example, they'll line up against the wall coming up towards the front door. So we've incorporated the workplace safety plan in respect of the office. As far as requirements for reopening, we've got modifications are in place. Instructional signage is already on site, and we're developing a little bit more. And physical distancing markers are out there. We'll tweak them as we go. And so for reopening analysis, as per the policy that identifies, just going to jump back there for a second. Criteria to reopen village facilities and increase or adjust service levels. So what I laid out at page 60 of the materials, which was part of the reopening policy, was number 1, the ability to comply with provincial health orders. So for example, gatherings and directives, physical distancing, along with applicable sector guidelines like cleaning protocols. Number 2, the cost of operating the facilities can be accommodated within the existing budget or through alternative means. Number 3, that there's reasonable public demand for the facility reopening or for the service increases or adjustments. Number 4, that the reopening or service increase adjustments, etc., will benefit the community in one or more direct or indirect ways. And number 5, that safety measures are in place to protect employees and the general public. So going through that analysis at the bottom of page 131 in respect of the village office, you see tick marks right through and the recommended opening date of June 25th, which is this Thursday.
Okay. Next up.
And I don't know if you want to just, any questions or comments or just, I mean, this one's.
I think I tell you what, during this period, rather than the hands up, why don't, if you've got a question, just unmute and ask as we're going.
Okay. So I lost my page.
Thank you for going through all the page numbers.
This is where. Okay, next up, council chambers, including the anteroom with the washroom, because it's got the washroom, so we kind of need it to be part of this.
What's the page number?
This is back to page 50. It's the next one on the list, council chambers. So in terms of the actual page, sorry for this, page 118. So current status, council chambers is operating with limited access during council committee meetings, as you know. Meetings are chaired by the mayor and chambers with municipal coordinator, municipal officer, councilors, and other staff attend via Zoom. Delegations and public can attend or participate via Zoom. And at the time that I wrote this, some technology challenges are still to be addressed. We are, I think, liking the new system. I think it works well. I did the IC meeting with this system as well. And it seems to have addressed our issues with respect to audio quality and echo and feedback and all those kinds of things, and provides us with a means to essentially live stream council meetings to anyone who wants to watch or attend and participate. So I think it's a better system than going with live stream video and feeding that onto YouTube, where the public can't really participate. In terms of hazard risk assessment, you got the contacts, and so those have been limited. We've got occupancy limits, and for this facility, I've got it at 10. So 5 max around this table. Tonight we have 4. We've got room for 1 more. And in the gallery, we could have a maximum of 5. And so we'll have signage at the door. We'll have, the intention is to have entry, I think, through the back door, exit through the front door. So we have a flow of traffic, and trying to make sure that people's space is respected and people are made to feel safe. We will look at what the alternatives look like for using the hall, should the need arise, and we'll have to assess how the technology will work in those circumstances. We don't have a big screen TV in the hall, for instance, so we can't just plug an HDMI cable from the computer into a screen, but we do have a projector and a pop-up screen, so that's one possibility, and we'll look at that a bit more. So we've addressed these things with occupancy, distancing, and the requirements for reopening our workplace safety plan, cleaning protocols. So this office or this chambers gets cleaned once a week as it presently stands on a weekend. So nobody else is currently using the facility. We're not renting it out to anyone. So it's being cleaned between meetings. We'll pull together the rest of the signers that we need in terms of reopening analysis. We don't really have the ability to comply with public health authority requirements without undertaking the measures that I've outlined. So we can't just throw open the doors to have full-on public meetings. And frankly, there really isn't that kind of demand, I don't think. I don't think the community benefit would be sufficient to, well, we can't do it anyways because of the public health authority requirements. So I think what we're doing now is as full and complete as we can do for the time being. And we'll continue to monitor the situation because, as everyone knows, with this pandemic, things change all the time.
Can I, before we get too much further, Peter, can I just make a comment on the council chambers and our efforts at walking our talk? I don't dispute you could get 5 people around that table 6 foot apart if you staggered and used alternate chairs. I don't think you have that tonight, certainly not when Kaylee was at the end of the table. So maybe we should look at pulling out some chairs, put them in certain positions so you get 6 feet. People are obliged to sit 6 feet. Someone took the chair up next to Ron and the one next to that, not 6 feet apart, and Kaylee wasn't when you first started the meeting. So then we should trying to reinforce these things by making them as rigid as we can. In our office, the meeting rooms look the strangest thing you've ever seen. There's 3 chairs in a meeting room your size, and there's a sign saying "Do not move chairs, sit here." So if we kind of do those kind of things, we can enforce our behaviours.
Yeah, I agree. I actually just saw a diagram that had to do with laid out a table plan and marked the spots that were appropriate to be used. And we can certainly do something similar as well as what I was thinking. So, because yeah, we are a little bit closer than we ought to be.
They do it at Metro. It's about,
yeah,
stickies. It's fine.
Yeah. Good point. Thank you. So the next one on the list is Broughton Hall, which I don't have in here because I prioritized these in accordance with what I felt was imminently doable. And as I indicated via correspondence, there are a number of other considerations that we're going to have to examine more closely with respect to the hall. The user groups weren't ready to go, they're done. So we've got a bit of time on our hands to figure out what that looks like and what would be required, who might be able to use it in the fall, who won't be able to, or what steps we'll have to take. And we'll have to tweak our rental facility agreements as well. So
good. Thank you very much, CEO. Councillor Cutler.
I just want to, can I just say that it's Canada, we're actually metric. So if we could abide by the 2 meter guideline as opposed to 6 feet, that would be preferable. Just, sticking point for me.
Okay.
I agree 100%.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Point taken. On the Broughton Hall, and I understand there's lots of different users who use it differently. There is one type of group, and someone has already asked me, that could probably be using it earlier, and these are the kind of workshop type groups. They have small numbers on tables and spread around the hall. I think the kind of groups I'm referring to, those that do quilting and other arts and crafts type workshops. I don't know if we can consider a condition for them earlier than the other mass groups that intend to have parties, or the kind of contact sport type, well, not contact sports, but the sport activities.
Yeah. Good point. Certainly those are capable of, I think, accommodation sooner than later. So we'll move that up the list, thanks. Anything else on that one, or shall I move on?
Yep, go on.
Okay, we've talked a little bit about the CLAT, and there's nothing in this package with respect to the CLAT at this point in time. Same with the Public Works Yard. NIA is pulling together that, putting the final touches on that in terms of the workplace safety plan. And so the next one up is Lions Bay Beach Park. And that one,
Should we start with a fanfare?
so on page 122 of your materials. So I've broken it down into public washrooms, playground equipment, kayak racks, lorry back pavilion, picnic tables and park benches, beach and cordoned off swimming area, grassy open spaces, and Lions Bay Beach Park parking lot. So the current status, as you know, is the park is closed. However, the warning tape around the playground equipment is not there anymore. There's evidence that it's being ignored and being played on. Residents have been permitted to access the kayak rack to transfer the craft swiftly to the water or from the water. And the public has been permitted to move swiftly through the park to access the beach, because the beach is still open. Evidence of public ignoring park closure. So first up, public washrooms. So the hazard risk assessment for this is high in terms of number of contacts. However, the modifications that we can make include limiting the number of customers to one at a time in each of the gender-specific washrooms. Occupancy limits will be posted. Signage for waiting line procedure will be posted as well, including physical distancing within that lineup. As you'll note throughout, I've made a suggestion with respect to potentially having something like a volunteer park ambassador group to help educate people and remind them to physically distance. They might carry around a kayak paddle to show 2 meters or something similar. And I think we could do that at the beach park, as well as some of our trails and some of our trails within the community and at our trailheads perhaps. So that's coming up later. Contact intensity cleaning, we've arranged to have done twice daily by the staff at the marina, and that is in line with the guidelines that have been issued by BC CDC and Vancouver Coastal Health, as well as parks, BC Parks. So there's a few different sector guidelines and sources that we can go to, but Vancouver Coastal Health is one that we also like to come back to in terms of providing clear direction from the local health authority. We would have warning signage as to the cleaning schedule and the risks of surface contact. And so with respect to the arrangement with Marina, they would essentially manage the washroom. They would take care of any minor issues. Their phone number would be on the wall. If there's a problem, people can contact them. They'll come over and take care of it. If there's a major problem, they will contact Public Works and we'll take care of it. They will provide the cleaning solutions, and we will supply and provide them with access to our supplies for toilet paper and sanitizer and soap and so forth. And so all these things can be brought together in terms of the requirements for reopening. These things are ready to go, almost. Got a little bit more signage to get ready. In terms of the analysis, we can comply with the public health requirements, financial viability. The cleaning costs are going to be about $100 a day. And so that's going to, you can do the math, but we can cover that under the operational budget.
We're thinking the MIA grant
And
towards that.
we've got MIA grant allocating some of that towards that. I don't know, I guess it's really kind of two different pots in terms of filming revenue, but that sort of in a theoretical way.
It would more be potentially meter revenue.
Right.
If we opened up the meters, we'd have some there.
Let's leave this issue with the CFO to have sleepless nights.
Yeah. Community benefit, public demand, these things are clear, and safety measures can be put into effect by the recommended opening date of July 1st. So on July 1st, as things stand, there will be 3 food trucks in the Lions Bay Beach parking lot from 4 to 8 p.m. as part of the events committees working with other volunteer groups and coordinating something to happen on Canada Day. There'll also be free popsicles from 6 to 8. And I think it would be challenging not to have the park and the washrooms open for that date. Any questions? Do you want to pause here, or do you want me to keep going?
If you could
I was
pause.
just curious about the MIA grant. What is that? What does that stand for?
That's the Municipal Insurance Association, who is our insurer and insures most local governments in BC. And they have a risk management grant that is available. I'm not sure what the formula is, but I think our portion stands at about $5,800 right now. And so they have confirmed for us that we can apply that in respect of reducing risks, things that we need to do to reduce risks in relation to the pandemic and COVID-19.
Thanks, Peter.
Right.
CAO, and it's rare that we've had a meeting where the Public Works Manager hasn't spoken much. So this is your warm-up call. With what can be expected to be the pent-up demand July the 1st, and a lot of people around, and having looked at the weather forecast, it's supposed to be sunny for the week starting Canada Day. The ever popular term garbage comes to mind. And my memory isn't as good as it used to be, but it seemed to be that we've got some Bear Smart cans down there. We use, I think, other cans, maybe not. It's kind of a jump ball for the works manager. If let's presume there's garbage overflow, what did we do? What will we do? And I'm leading to the answer to what the marina staff could do is bag the garbage, put it in a washroom storage room, and then whoever regularly picks it up there. So that's kind of my jump ball. If you can make me feel comfortable, Mr. Jaffer, I'd love that.
So we've increased our frequency, and waste control services are collecting on a weekly basis. We didn't have very much of an issue last year with them going to the weekly, but you're absolutely right. If the cans are overflowing, we can reach out to the marina and ask them to put them in the storeroom.
Perfect. If we can leave that with the CAO when he seals the deal to do that. I mean, it's been a long time, but every once in a while we get to complete. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for the CAO on this topic?
Yeah, I think I guess the beach park is probably one that I'm certainly nervous about, and I'm sure everyone else as well. The numbers, Peter, I know you're going to rush through them fast earlier, and came up with some numbers of what you thought the beach park could handle. I thought that was overstated. And I would certainly be concerned, if you allowed for 30 people to be in the swimming pool and 50 people to be on the grass. Well, if the sun clouded over, the 30 people joined the 50 people, and there was 10 up the top, and someone decided to start a game of frisbee, those were moving down as well. That number feels high to me. That sounds like a lot of people in that area, because they won't stay in those remote locations. The chances are, for some reason, they might all congregate into one spot. The second thought I have, or concern I have, is this idea about these volunteers. I remember you bringing up the fact that bylaw officers weren't police. They weren't equipped to deal with enforcing social distancing, although they could try and encourage it. Volunteers even less so. I don't know that I have a better solution. I don't know that it's something we shouldn't consider. It does give me some angst though. Do you have people that have put up their hands? Do you have an idea of who these people would be?
There actually is one person who's already put up his hand to volunteer in that capacity on trails. But it is something that other municipalities have commenced doing. Most of the time that is with staff, but they're not trained staff, not otherwise trained in that capacity. And, as you noted, the enforcement mechanism is really just sort of strongly worded words of encouragement and education and reminders. And really, if push comes to shove, no, they're not going to be doing anything about it other than they can notify the bylaw officer if bylaw officer is on duty, or alternatively have a number to call, whether it's me or the Public Works emergency line, whereby we can assess the situation and, if necessary, contact the RCMP if there's a problem. But for the most part, I hope that we'll have, obviously it's going to be certain days when we don't have bylaw on, but I'm thinking of this as people working in a capacity or volunteering in a capacity that really is trying to create a friendly atmosphere, a welcoming atmosphere, a kind atmosphere, and through that kind of approach, is the old getting more bees with honey. So I think that there is still a lot to consider, and we do have a volunteer policy that was created back in 2014 that I've been reviewing and looking at, and I've been asking some pointed questions to our insurers and to our lawyers in terms of coverage and so forth, and I think we're in a pretty good place. So I think it's something that we certainly could take a good close look at. To the extent that people are going to put up their hand and volunteer to do this, I'm not sure. We'll have to see what that looks like, but I think it's something that I'm prepared to work on and create some parameters around, create a terms of reference, and see what that looks like, and put out a call for expressions of interest and see what we get. But I think it's something that could assist us in creating a good atmosphere, a respectful atmosphere, and could serve us well, I think, in the circumstances, because we are under capacity in terms of our ability to have lots of people around doing stuff. So, so we sort of jumped ahead. That was going to come later in the in part 4, I think. But in any event, we're here.
Well, I think we'll come back to the volunteers. I think, Councillor Abbott, your key issue is there's so many square feet of beach.
Okay, so I'll speak to that as well. So there are guidelines that refer to providing 5 square meters per person. And our grassy area alone, which I ground truth today, is about 800 square meters. So if you give 5 meters for each person, you've got 160 people just on that grassy area. To me, that sounds like too much. But that's everybody doing this and touching their fingers almost. So it's not going to be like that. So when we talk about having a quarter of that, 40 people, and you know, looking around, and you just have to visualize pods sitting on the grass. And some pods will have 2 people. There might be 2 people on a bench, 4 people sitting around a picnic table, a family of 6 over there, and before you know it, you're at 40 real quick, but there's going to be lots of green space in between them. I think it could hold 50, 60 easy. But I think I would prefer to be conservative and start slow. And then same thing, I ground truthed on the beach this afternoon, and that space is about 35 long by at least 3, in some places 4 or more meters wide. So you're at least 120 to 140 square meters. And again, you've got lots of room for people, 30 people easy.
Can I just ask a question though? Are we not still abiding by no more than 50 people gathering in a public space? Has that changed? I just haven't been.
It's not a hard and fast rule. What the rule is 50 people, but it depends on the ability, the space that you've got to work with. So it's in the email that I sent earlier, I referenced the wording that was pulled straight out of a Vancouver Coastal Health letter that references the gatherings of 50, subject to the facility being capable of handling more than 50 people, provided that social distancing rules can be met. So that is the key, is that, you know, you could have 100, you could have 200 people in a facility as long as you can meet social distancing requirements. So particularly when you're outdoors.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see the email, sorry, Peter, but thank you for clarifying.
So we're really going to follow the format of the pictures we've seen where people are on in Vancouver on the beach where they're spread across the length of the thing. I mean, you can do the photo thing where it looks like they're all on top of each other, but farther away or above, they're all 10 feet apart at least.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I just feel I'm scared when we do simplistic math and then decide on a number. You know, it's the way people behave in here. I mean, there's a large area taken up by kids playing, kids running around. I just, over 100 people down there seems like a lot to me. Maybe I'm sure the math works. I'm sure everyone can do arithmetic. I feel uncomfortable with over 100 people down there, to be honest, and trying to maintain social distancing.
Yeah, I think that if you do the 5 meter math, you come up with something like about 250 people, and that makes me extremely uncomfortable. I would not want to recommend doing that at all. I think that the maximum 100 occupancy limit is a very conservative number. I wanted to go down there and make sure that that was the case, and I did that today, and I'm feeling very comfortable about it. I realized that, you know, providing for, you know, 6 people at the back pavilion and 5 on each playground, they might not be there. They might be running around and but there's going to be people who are static, people who are fluid. It's going to be in constant movement, but I think that there is lots of space to accommodate 100 people doing a variety of things in different locations in that park. So I think it's going to be a bit of trial and error, hopefully no error, but I feel like that number is conservative, and that we can easily accommodate it. And I'd like to start conservative, and if there's people clamoring to get in, because I think, you know, we're gonna have to figure out how do we cut it off at 100. And that's another way in which a volunteer group could assist by having people at a cordoned off entry to the park saying, no, sorry, you gotta wait, just like the grocery store where you gotta wait because there's too many people in the store. Hopefully you don't have to wait for too long, and then you get to go in to keep our numbers within the parameters that I've outlined.
Yeah, okay, I find it hard to believe 100 is conservative. 5 square meters does not means you're less than 2 meters apart, by the way. The math doesn't work there, because if you're all 2 meters apart, you need more than 5 square meters each. So I don't know who did that math. Yeah, I just think we should, you know, have a lower number as our threshold. I just think 100 people down there, or one person in every 5 square meters, which doesn't need social distancing. So, and I understand there's groups, and you allow for groups, and family groups can be closer and so on. I find it hard to believe that's conservative. Anyway.
I've plotted out little bubbles all over the grass and all over the beach, and
All right.
averaged it out. So I think that there's, you know, I'm a conservative person, and I'm not a risk taker at all. I'm oriented the other way. So I had to convince myself. I was doubtful myself. It seemed like high number, but I'm quite comfortable with it, to tell you the truth.
I think this is a messy topic. It's pretty tough to, other than have a personal view on it. I think those who go to Canada Day are going to have a pretty clear view how busy that place is by doing a quick count, how people act on the beach. I'm fine with it's also an enforcement issue here too, which, as you say, I haven't quite figured this one out. So my sense here to my colleagues is I think we've got to start somewhere. We're starting conservatively. We're still assessing and refining. And the only alternative to that is to not do anything and keep the park closed, which will be like storming at the Bastille on Canada Day. It's probably a bad example, but you know. So I think that my sense is that we should go with this one as presented, and just wait for some feedback from staff or our own residents. My sense is that residents are not going to complain about our own residents. They may complain about casual visitors who arrive and maybe come in 2 cars and there's 12 people, and you know, the sense of it's our beach and why are they here? That's not how we're operating this. So I guess where I'm going with this is I think we've got to give start from somewhere small that we are and go with the latitude, assess and evaluate. That would be, so I'm fine with this as it sits. I appreciate the CAO's conservativeness. I'm the same too. But at the same time, we don't have a little paramilitary force sitting behind us ready to do the enforcement.
Can I just make a comment, or it's more of a question to Peter and staff? What sort of signage will you put up at the park, and what kind of educating will we do? And I guess what I'm getting at is, can we just make it clear, perhaps, to visitors of the beach that if at any point they don't feel comfortable, their best course of action is to leave as opposed to wait for someone to enforce? Because if we're really concerned about safety, that's probably the most realistic mechanism, right? If too many people show up, the right course of action for residents is just to get up and go away, and not expect someone to come around with a stick and say, you need to move this way, you need to move that way.
Councillor Barmayer, I strongly expect that our own residents are going to do just that.
Yeah.
All right, I think I got my eye on the
And that's
clock.
where I have my concern about volunteers, and these people obviously need to be give guidance and training. They're going to have some sort of jacket on that says, I'm a volunteer. People are going to ask them, what are you doing about this? And as you said, Peter, before, you know, they aren't trained for confrontation. Anyway,
Councillor
some
Barmayer.
reservations around that. Just one
Sorry.
last thing. I'm not sure how we can talk about the beach park if we don't talk about the beach parking, because the two do go together.
Councillor Abbott, I'm going to hold you here. We're going to separate the volunteers to the last item on this one.
And we're going to do the beach parking later as well.
Well, the volunteers are they're going to be at two places, either the trailheads or the beach park.
Sorry, I said beach parking. The parking lot at the beach. Are we discussing that now, or is that separate discussion?
No, separate. Sorry, I thought you were into the volunteers.
The parking lot is sort of the tail end of this.
Okay.
You know, we've got the different sections that are alluded to, and I won't go through each of them because you've already seen the materials. You know, we got the playground equipment, and there's the
Okay, let's go to
assessment for each.
quick close parking lot.
Okay. So with respect to the parking lot, we've got sort of medium number of contacts. People generally have the safety of their own vehicles. There will be signage to remind them to stay in their vehicle until such time as it's safe to emerge if there's people getting out around them. There's an occupancy limit, which is governed by the number of parking spaces in the parking lot. Metering would assist that in terms of the intended occupancy and use of the lot and enforcing of that. There'll be physical distancing and directional signage. Other modifications, signage, well, I just alluded to staying in your car. Washing hands, especially at the meter regarding surface contacts. And so in terms of the reopening analysis, there's an ability to comply with public health requirements. Financial viability is viable, obviously, and provides additional revenue to help pay for some of the things. Public demand, historical summer usage, and community benefit. This provides a designated place for visitors to park, thereby mitigating parking issues and aggravations on residential streets. Safety measures and the rest of it will be installed by the recommended opening date. So what I've recommended here is that that we not open the beach park until the meters are installed. So effectively, what it will do is, and my thought process on this is to provide for a slower, more gradual, more controlled opening of the beach park by not having the parking lot available for visitors from the get-go. But to plan for that eventuality, it gives us some time to make adjustments, to ensure that we have things operating in a controlled and efficient manner in the beach park before we provide for parking for visitors to come and utilize it. In the interim, there would likely be a couple of more food truck events in that parking lot, although we could also look at other locations for food trucks down the line, whether it's Kelvin Grove Beach Park parking lot or the school parking lot.
Give a specific date. Councillor Cunliffe, I know you're on the lot here in a second.
So,
do you have a date that you're thinking of?
well, I mean, the advice that we got from our parking lot company is 30 days. So I've just put down approximately July 23rd, depending on when we give them notice and when they can get the meter and program it and so forth. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. DeJong. Councillor Cunliffe, you've got a question, and then if I'd like
Yeah,
to.
just in regards, I don't know if they redirect me, but I don't feel we can even entertain opening up the lot even in 30 days. If we are trying to police 100 people maximum, I think this is going to be hugely problematic. 100 people with a family of 5, that's only 25 families or less from Lions Bay standing outside the park waiting for entry, and they've walked to the park. I just see that this is, I'm not sure how we could, volunteers or not, I'm just very hesitant. This makes me very hesitant.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cunliffe. I'm going to take the leap of faith that subject to the other piece on parking, which will come up next, and also the volunteer piece, that the CFO or the CAO shot his bolt on all the topics. We've asked all the questions as we've gone along. We're down to a philosophical piece, which is the parking lot. The parking lot with the 25 spots there, which feed to the park. I mean, clearly it's going to be non-residents that are going to be most of those 25. And then the beach park is filled with non-residents or a combination of our residents. So it really is a legitimate point about delaying the opening. CAO?
I was just reminded that
Sorry.
one of the things that we came to learn in terms of operating the parking lot and the meters there was that a lot of our customers are actually people who go and park to get on a boat at the marina, whether that's a friend's boat or their own boat, and they just don't have a parking spot. And so a lot of times that's our customer. They're not in the beach park, but they're contributing to our meter revenues. So.
Well, you're stealing the thunder of my video on Friday. There are 220 boats and 105 parking spots, and it's usually different groups gathering in multiple cars before they go on the boat. So that's the competition with the beach people and the hikers. I'm going to draw the piece back here to, I think it's one leads to the other. If we're limiting the number of people into the beach park.
Ron, I think we lost about 10 seconds of what you said there. I'm not sure if it was just me, but it was a really long pause.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barmer. So I'll just tie this up because I think we've got the whole picture on this topic up till the final piece, which is the number of people in the beach park and opening the parking lot. And to a certain extent, well, not to a certain extent, to a very large extent, one equals the other. If we open the parking lot, the beach gets filled from non-residents, although as CAO says, there are some boaters. So I think this is where we should focus our issue. Do we want to close, I mean, and the magic of closing it for a month, it's probably going to be 2 months. Let's cut to the quick on this one. So are we prepared to do that? And I see why our villagers might do it. And I think council's going to put up the, how can you be a welcoming community and close your park down by denying access? But that's a reality. I think we can defend ourselves in media if it comes to that, because we're dealing with the COVID issues and we are a unique footprint. This is not Second or Sunset Beach with miles of beach. This is not Ambleside with miles of beach. This is a tiny park and a tiny beach. So I think for the, I'd like to go through a rotation of the councillors and say, where do you stand on the number in the park, and yes or no on closure of the parking lot? And if so, to what date would you have it open? So Neville, it's a curse having your last name with an A, but you were up first.
I'm still of the opinion if we open the beach park, which I think is where we're going, we should not open the parking lot. If 25 people pitched up with 4 people in the car, there's your 100 people and not a single resident gets on. No, that's not what's going to happen, but that's, you know, part of this doing things with math. I think we should leave the beach parking lot closed for now, for the foreseeable future. If you want to do a gradual opening, do it without the parking lot.
Thank you very much. And we will go with Councillor Barmere.
I have just a few thoughts. I think I mentioned this to you maybe a couple days ago, Ron, but you look at a park like Stanley Park in the city. It's 4 square kilometers. It has over 1,200 parking spots, and it's still closed to vehicular traffic. Yet it's open to the public to walk in. It's just an example of sort of number of parking spots versus area. And you look at Lions Bay. Lions Bay is about 2 square kilometers, just over 2 square kilometers. So we're half the size of Stanley Park, the entire village. And we have, what's the number of spots down in that parking lot? Maybe 50. Peter, correct me if I'm wrong.
25 at the CN, but.
Okay, so 25 spots. Right, it's without question that we're going to get inundated with visitors really quickly if the lot opens, and we, just the numbers just don't work in our favor. And if we're trying to restrict and maintain healthy distance within the park, I really think just the population pressure on that lot is gonna outstrip what we can control. So from my perspective, opening the park is a great idea. Opening the parking lot, I'm a bit hesitant.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bein.
Whoops, there we go. Yeah, I agree with opening the park. It seems just a shame to keep it closed when you've got so many residents just longing for it to be open. And, with good weather coming, what better thing can you do than get outside and get some fresh air? Quite frankly, I think the reasons for having it closed are passing. I think we're on the downward side of the slope and it's just getting better. And to the CAO's comment about spacing and everything, I think generally village residents are cognizant of the risks you take if you get too close. Like we walk our dog often and on trails and everything. And people make an effort to give you distance and space as you go by. And I think, like I say, I think the residents get it. So I don't have a problem with that at all. I'm uncomfortable, quite frankly, opening the parking lot though, because it's not for the benefit of the community. And our beach park will be utilized if too many people come in. And I think with the early signs of good weather coming, earlier this year, we had so many people coming from outside that were really not showing any good sense at all, in my opinion, of social distancing or any of that sort of stuff. So I think if somebody wants to go to a beach park, go somewhere else. We're too small to carry the weight of Metro Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bein. Councillor Cunliffe.
Yeah, I have to agree with most points here. And that being said, I think I'm aware that Stanley Park did reopen to traffic, but at 50% capacity. They did shut one lane down. I believe there is parking available, paid parking, but still you do have a massive amount of land. And as for, distancing on a trail, it's pretty easy to give someone space. When we're at a beach park with a playground, I mean, it's the whole reason the kids stayed home from school, because kids that are young, they don't social distance. They are being taught, but they're not recognizing that. I think we've been lucky in Lions Bay, as far as I'm aware of. Don't know of anybody who's contracted COVID-19. I know that there hasn't been any fatalities from COVID-19. But when we do invite people from outside that are more than welcome to come, and if there's other parking available and they want to walk down to the beach, but when it comes to kids, it's risky. They're going to be close. So I'm in favor of opening the park. I know it's not being recognized by some of our residents. I do not want to see families take, fines that are they're extreme and for a reason. So I'm in favor of opening the park, but at this point, the parking lot just seems like too big of a risk.
There you go. Councillor Abbott, can I get you to conclude on this topic?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add a comment to what Councillor Bein said, just said. One of the things he said, you know, the worst of this is past us and we've got it flattened, or words to that effect. I don't believe that. The health authorities don't believe that. You just have to look south to see what's going on in places that haven't taken the measures we've done so well in BC. This COVID disease is no different. It's gone nowhere. It's still where it was 3 months, 4 months ago. All we are doing is behaving better and stopping the spread. One surefire way of going back to where we were is to think we got this thing beat. And you just have to look at places in the US to know that. So, yeah, we have to be vigilant. We're only here and able to do this because we have been vigilant as a group in general, as a province in general. And we have to keep in mind it isn't past us.
Okay, then, if I can summarize, then I think it's unanimous that the CN lot remains closed, and I don't think we have to address when it is opened. The CAO knows we've got 2 more meetings in July, and then we break for August. So if it's going to be, his recommendation will be, it'll be opened, it'll come to us in the 2nd meeting of July. So that would be that piece. On the beach park, there's no reluctance to have council open it, but the reluctance is the number of people, which we're still in the assess and evaluate stage. So I think on that one, I think staff is going to undertake how to cap the number, for lack of a better term. I short of just not opening it, I don't really see an alternative. If I could have I editorialized that for everybody's benefit, and we're in agreement there? Councillor Bein, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Councillor Abbott, are you yes?
Sure.
Thank you. All right. I'm not going to, thank you very much, everybody. So we're going to close off the Lions Bay Beach parking lot and that. To the CAO, I mean, we're not splitting all this stuff for opens and closes, so after the main motion. You're taking notes.
Yeah, oh yeah, I've got.
Okay, fine. Let's quickly, CAO, what I would ask is that you go through the KG Beach Park, the Wade Park, Mountain Drive, Tennis Court, Marjorie Meadows, and then we'll cover the rest under parking.
Okay. So Kelvin Grove is currently closed because of the construction, primarily because of the construction there, and there's really no means of providing safe access to the beach as things presently stand. So the washrooms are also closed. The beach, the doggy beach is closed, and the parking lot is closed. And I don't see a basis upon which those would reopen prior to that project being completed at the end of the summer, probably early September, I'm guessing. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's right, Mr. Jaffer, is it late August, early September, but somewhere there?
I believe so, yes.
So the recommendation is that the status quo remain for the balance of the summer at Kelvin Grove.
Let's stop there. I believe I understand council's viewpoint on this, so I would concur, and we'll move on to the next topic unless there's a hand that shoots up.
Well, I was just curious. So, Naya, are you saying there is no way to provide safe passage to the dog beach for residents with dogs? Is that your position?
Anything's doable at a cost.
Okay, so it's okay. So there would be a cost associated with doing that.
Yeah.
Councillor Barmayer, I'm bringing up dogs and water later on if you hang in there.
Okay, sounds good.
Sorry,
All right.
I had a similar thought, to be honest. This is the one place where residents can take dogs to a beach. So when you say at a cost, now, I mean, is it not just simply a barricade and a walkway?
No, because of the proximity of the wastewater treatment plant to the edge of the path, there really isn't any room there. So they would have to cut into the slope and pipe in a ditch.
Okay. Okay, I haven't been down to look at it. All right, I'll save that. Thanks. Is it
I
just
don't know
me or
if
did we
you,
lose everyone?
I think we
I
lost
can't hear the council hall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got lost there for a minute.
we're still lost. Council, the office isn't on.
Well, I would contend they are lost. We could get on with it.
Agreed, they are lost.
And we're still here, so. How long till they figure it out, I wonder?
Is anyone going to send them a message?
I'll send them a chat here.
Yeah, I'm using my iPad, so I'm a little technology challenged.
Be too bad if this is Ron's best speech.
Oh, Carla says, yes, we know. They are aware.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, we can, Carla. Thank you.
Can anybody hear us?
The blue light's not on. We'd have to
Yes.
use the chat.
We can hear you, we can't see you.
It's the connections. Lost the internet because you switched over, right? We haven't limited. It's going to take a bit to connect. So, now
Well, can we go with just audio?
can you use your chat function?
I'm just doing, Penny just said she can hear but not see.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Careful what we say. What did you?
It's not. It's not. There's no lights.
You get disconnected underneath. Did you say you kicked a wire?
Yeah, no, it's.
No, it's Ron.
The wire just goes all the way up.
Okay. So then here's the. It's already all jammed in there.
I think it had to do with the connection kicked out the mic first.
Right. Penny says that she can hear us well.
Nice if you can hear us too.
No, we can hear you, we just can't see you. Or I can hear you guys.
I think we can all hear each other.
That's correct, yeah. At least we could.
Got the computer audio.
Okay, now can you hear us?
Yes,
Brett?
we've heard you all along.
Good.
Okay. So
Okay,
a
can't see you.
connection issue there.
We still can't see you, but we can hear you.
Carla or Peter, can you hear us?
Okay, video's back, but you're muted.
Can you hear us?
Try that. Can you hear us?
That's it. Yep,
Okay,
you
we're
got
good.
it.
Thank you. Let's just say it was voodoo and leave it at that.
Just maybe before we continue, it's almost.
Yeah, can we, I'll put forward the motion for an extension for, let's call it an hour and a quarter. I have a seconder hand, please. Thank you. All in favor? Ayes. Good. Thank you. Done. All right. Thank you, everybody. Let's conclude on this one, which was Councillor Abbott's question to the works manager on the KG dog access, and he responded that it's a work site, but you can access the old trail, but you're walking in the ditch or on the slope side. Is that correct, Mr. Jaffer?
Yeah, it's not safe to do so. They require space to work on and in the wet well. So they would have to pipe in the ditch and cut into the slope a bit.
Okay, and for, so that's that piece on the KG beach access and why people would be going there. As I've said to Councillor Barmeyer, I'm talking about the dogs and beaches later on in my piece. So if everybody's fine with that, then we'll conclude on the KG piece, which was public washrooms closed, beach closed, parking lot closed. I'll take that as unanimity and ask that Mr. DeJong deal with Wade Park, Mountain Drive Tennis Court, and Marjorie Meadows.
Okay, Wade Park is found at page 133, and so there's a low number of contacts, the risk hazard assessment, occupancy limit, I think we've got estimated at 10, and signage for physical distancing, park ambassadors if necessary, and physical distancing signage. So we're all set to open this in terms of the analysis, and could do so, recommend doing so June 24th, which is tomorrow. I guess we probably, how much time do we need to get signage in Wade Park? This physical distancing signage. And
There's that distancing sign there now.
I haven't checked with West Van Sign Shop yet on their ability to create signs.
The one with the little hiker guy.
Yeah, the mayor says there's already a physical distancing sign there, and all we're going to use for occupancy is a laminated version of the Worksafebc. So we're good to go. We could do it tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions on Wade Park?
Nope. Pass on that. Tennis court.
Okay. Tennis court is already open. I'm not sure. Did I actually put anything in here? Oh yeah, I did. Okay. Page 130. We basically went through this assessment a little while ago and referred to the guidelines that have been put out by Tennis BC. In terms of using separate colored balls, washing hands, physical distancing. We've got occupancy of 2 unless it's doubles, but only if people are from the same household was what we put up there. And so that signage is all in place, including hand sanitizer strapped to the facility. And the opening, as you'll see at the bottom of the page, is complete. No service adjustment expected.
Just a quick question, Peter. In these places where we say hand washing is required, are we providing hand sanitizers, hand washing stations, or are we just leaving it up to people to take their own along?
We actually have a bottle of hand sanitizer strapped to the fence at the tennis court.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a refillable that, I don't know, Nye, do you know if that's been refilled yet to date, or to what extent it's been used?
No, we haven't had to refill it yet.
Okay. And so the next one was Marjorie Meadows, and that would be on page 129. So the risk assessment is low, physical distancing signage, which I think we have in place already. Occupancy limit we put at 3. And so that's ready to go, and from the opening analysis, we could open that tomorrow as well.
You know, if I could just say, I don't think anyone realized it was closed. I take the dog out there regularly, and there's people occasionally showing up, but there was nothing indicating it was closed.
Yeah, and I might be misstating the status, but it may be that that's where we put a physical distancing sign and kept it open, and I've got this wrong. So I think you're right in that, Councillor Bein. My apologies.
Okay, thank you very much. So that covers the topics for this particular section that we are in discussion on. Are there any questions for CAO to join on the variety of things? Last chance on it, either from Marjorie Meadows. I'm on page 50, going back up to the village office. Sorry, try that again. Yes, to the village office. We've excluded the parking and trail parts in the streets.
So what I've got here for open is the office, Wade Park, Lions Bay Beach Park, other than the parking lot, Mountain Drive Tennis Court, Marjorie Meadows. And I guess I should clarify, council chambers would be remaining at the current usage that we've got and supplementing it with appropriate signage as discussed.
All right, so council members, that's as per staff's recommendation, we've guided on the park and we've guided on the CN lot, and the CAO has his notes on that. So I think we've discussed all of this until the cows come home. Unless there's another question in the next second, I'm going to call the motion on this section and we'll move to the next. Okay, I will call the motion. All in favor, ayes 4, nays opposed, please.
Aye.
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 Councillor Barmier.
Aye, sorry, I was muted.
Thank you. Unanimous on that. So we will not, okay, so I'll read the next section. And this, again, in our splitting this up, that the parking changes recommended in this report be implemented by staff. And I'll stop there. I'm using page, and I'm going to hand this back to the CAO in a second. I'm using page 50 as my guideline. And I'm going in reverse order, which is the bottom of the page, village streets and boulevards. Then hiking trails, which has got A, B, and C with it, Brunswick Beach. If we could go in that order, that'd be great.
Sorry, can you just sort of say that one more time?
Certainly. Just went in.
I'm gonna go
in reverse at the bottom up. The boulevard streets first, and like I was thinking, I think you were too.
Okay, so what suggested here in terms of tweaking our current situation for village streets and boulevards, other than those that are going to be spoken to next, is we have a few areas where we have changed our normal practice. We've made some changes on Ocean View Road to restrict parking to residents only in most cases. And we've done the same thing on Mountain Drive, which previously has served as sort of the first relief valve from the Sunset Trailhead going down the hill on the uphill side of the street. And previously that was available to visitors to park in. We made that resident-only parking earlier this year, and that has created additional issues that we've seen over the last several weeks, including people parking on the west side of Mountain Drive in some of the lay-bys that the residents like to use for themselves, parking in areas or ways in which they are blocking the regular flow of traffic, and pushing vehicles down the hill, down Bayview Road, and down Mountain and down Bayview, to the extent that people are trying to squeeze into spots, some where they can get off the road and some where they can't, and they're creating hazards on a steep and windy hill, as well as spilling down Stewart Road. That's been regularly full of vehicles, and all the way down Bayview. Part of that as well is got to do with the school field, or the school parking lot, but I think that's going to be a separate issue. So really, I think right now, the changes that I'm suggesting are some relaxations here and there on Ocean View to the extent that we can, provide a few more spots for visitors to park if they want to go hiking up that way, and opening up the east side of the road on Mountain View Drive, or Mountain Drive, sorry, and providing that as a relief valve for sunset parking.
Thank you very much, CEO DeJohn. If I can just recap this so we can move on to the next section. Councillor and staff have seen the information pieces that I've sent via email on both of these roads to quickly and Capsule Mountain, where I think we're talking from 210, which is the corner home at the corner of Mountain and Bayview, down to 400. The residences are on the downside. The number of people that I canvassed were unanimous that we are welcoming, and they are very comfortable with having the parking amended on the hillside, the mountainside. And there's it's a significant stretch of road, and there's vast opportunities for casual visitor parking. So the residents endorse that, and I don't want to get into the weeds on where to put the stuff or different signage, but and I would leave that with staff to open it up, take down the permit parking pieces as they will, and modify the resident-only parking for resident parking only. The residents asked for a couple of areas along the way that they could have some of their overflow, I guess. But I think that that has universally been well received by these people. And I'm very comfortable with that, and council's seen my piece on that. I'll go to the Ocean View one too. Without, again, on the email side, I canvassed people around me and I identified a variety of neighbors who were very comfortable in having the signage modified or deleted in front of their homes. And if we use that as the template that staff can use to investigate further, I'm fine with that too. So if there's, I think the council members know what areas we're talking about. I don't want to split what's in front of each home. Excuse me. Excuse me. I'd leave it with staff to make the final call on this. But I would be fine with both Mountain and Ocean View as I've recommended separately. And I'll hand this over to the councillors. If you've got any questions or changes, please say so now.
The only question I have is in terms of sort of logistics. Would it be a matter of changing the signs that are currently, they have a green font on them and they typically read permit only? Would it be a matter of changing those to May to September parking, or what would that look like? I'm just curious.
No, May to September wouldn't have any effect on what we currently have happening. So we taking down those signs, other than picking perhaps a few spots along the way to provide some restricted areas for residents, but the balance would be unsigned so that visitors could park there.
So the signs that suggest no parking in a certain direction, those would stay?
I'm not sure that there is any no parking, other than there's a couple of spots where the road narrows and the ditch widens, I think. But if there's no parking in any of those spots, then that's probably going to stay the way it is. It's just a case of removing the permit required signage, other than a couple of spots which we'll maintain for residents.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to, the only reason I'm bringing this up, sorry, Ron, is because I felt like Public Works did a very good job of clarifying where parking is and where there's no parking. It seemed, at least for Ocean View, pretty unambiguous. It was very clear where you could park and very clear where you couldn't. So I'm sort of reticent to see that go backwards.
Yeah, I think Councillor Barmer, my sense of the recommended spots that I suggested and the owners agreed with would just be taking signs down.
Pardon me?
Okay.
Can we just go back to the sunset side? We're suggesting putting it back the way it was before we started making COVID adjustments. Is that what you're saying?
We were talking about Mountain and Ocean View. We haven't gotten to another street yet.
Oh, sorry, I meant Mountain. Sorry, I meant Mountain. I said Sunset, sorry. Are we just taking down on the east side of Mountain, the ones that are on all the hydro poles? Or what further adjustments would we make? The additional signs we stuck in all the hydro poles, those are coming down. I think that's what everyone's talking about.
That's correct.
Are we making any other adjustments to what's there now versus what might have been there last year this time?
The only difference from last year would be that we're going to leave a couple of spots where it will still be permit required for residents to have a couple of additional spots on the east side.
Okay.
All right. I think within those two streets, which were the main topic, I think if we make reference to staff as guidance to staff, I think they've heard it on Mountain, and I think they've got my email advice on Ocean View, which everybody's concurred with. So I think let's go back up and then CAO. So the next piece would be, which you've got is item number 10, hiking trails to the Lions and Tunnel Bluff, including A, B, and C. And why don't you start there?
Okay. So I'm recommending that we reopen the Sunset Trailhead parking lot. That provides parking for about 15 or 16 cars, and that we put the meter back in as soon as we can. I think we've seen that people are going to come and hike regardless of the steps that we take, and that I think to the extent that we can and where it is least impactful for residents in particular, we ought to provide places for them to park. That was sort of the direction that we went with the parking plan over the last few years, and seemed to be increasingly producing the results that we were after. And I think that that will be beneficial and advantageous for residents in that neighborhood, as well as other neighborhoods which have been feeling the effects of not having that lot.
I agree with the opening. Councillors, if you disagreed, shoot your hand up. There being none, next. Do we want to add to this particular item so that we don't lose it, the inclusion of the porta potty? Thank you very much, CAO. Did we have one or two there? One seemed to be sufficient.
Yeah.
And it's getting swapped out or cleaned, so we're off the hook on that. I would be in favor of that as well, and I'm sure the council members are too.
Okay.
Can we just finish off on the parking? So the rest of the signage on Sunset is going to stay as it is currently, correct?
Yeah, the signage on Sunset, north and south, in terms of in front of the residences, would remain the same. That's the same as it's been the last couple of years. So it's all resident permit required, going all the way down the hill until you get to Mountain.
Okay, that's the way it is currently. I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. The next one here is the Brunswick interchange parking areas. And I've used the plural there because what I've referred to in the materials is not only the traditional parking lot that was in the interchange area in Modi's jurisdiction, but also the suggestion that, well, before I go on to talking about what the expanded idea is, I want to first talk about the logic behind reverting to allowing parking in that interchange area. And I say allowing with, I'm using that word a little bit loosely, I think, because I want to remind council that when we're in the initial stages of the pandemic and in lockdown, I prevailed upon Ministry of Transportation to let us close that off and put up towing signage and put it on their towing list. At the time, they agreed that the circumstances were such that people ought not to be traveling outside their own communities. The messaging to everybody was stay close to home. And so they agreed with it on that basis. I don't think we're going to see it become a permanent state of affairs in any event. And their rationale has always been that there are few places in the area, in the vicinity, that people can park to access provincial crown lands, and that is a place that they deem to be a safe place. And so I think that we might not have a choice at some point in any event. I think, however, that we ought to be proactive in terms of asking them to open it up, because what we've seen with, this is the combination of effects that have been going on from various different things, steps that we've taken, steps that Ministry of Transportation has taken. They have put 30-minute time limits on the parking lot at Tunnel Point, and that's where a lot of people used to park and cross the highway, dangerously hike up the bank there and access the Tunnel Bus Trail. They can't really do that anymore. They get towed, and there's towing signage all the way along the highway. So all the spots that they used to park to go hiking are no longer available to them, which has driven them into Lions Bay. I think that what we've seen is that influx of demand all over the place in Lions Bay. We've seen people in the general store condos not able to find parking in front of their own homes. And that's because hikers are looking for somewhere to park. We've rectified that for the residents and put up permit required signage, but that's the kind of thing that we're seeing. We're seeing the effects of these kinds of things all over the place. And I think that, as I said, they're going to come, and we need to find places that are the least impactful for residents in order to accommodate them. And I think that that is one of the least impactful places that we can possibly utilize, and that it ought to be utilized. To that, I would add the road going down into Brunswick on the east side of the railway track. There's lots of room. We could move a couple of boulders that presumably were placed there so that people wouldn't park there. But we could provide several more parking spots going down either or both sides of that road. A little room to clear at the bottom. We could put quite a few cars there. What we heard from the two residents that came and spoke to us a few weeks ago was that they don't want traffic driving through their neighborhood. But if people don't have a place to park, and let's say they do want to go to the beach, which they have the right to do, they're going to go looking for parking spots, even though our signage says, don't bother, there's nothing here unless you've got a permit. We've seen it time and time again, they still go down, they still drive around. So I think that it would be beneficial to those residents if we provide places for people to park before they go into that neighborhood, before they cross the train tracks. And I think that we can do that in a way that's very non-intrusive and the least impactful to the residents. So I think that that is something that council ought to consider strongly. And the third area in that area, and third leg of this stool is Crystal Falls Road. Right now we've got a few spots that are permit required and other spots that are anybody can park. And I think we should just allow as many spots as feasible to park there. We do have no parking further up that road as we get up by the tank, so that there's room for the fire truck to turn around and so forth. But I think if we could add a few more spots there as well.
Peter, do you think it would be helpful to have a map on the screen to understand what sections of Brunswick Beach Road and Crystal Falls Road you're talking about? Because
yeah.
I just pulled up Google Maps to look at it, and I just wanted to be clear about what it is you're talking about specifically.
Councillor Barmere, so let's go with the first piece, which was the moving a few boulders. That if you go under the overpass,
yeah,
and if you veer to the left, you will go down to the train tracks. If you veer hard left, that is a perpendicular hard left, you'll get into what used to be I think it used to be a former parking lot, but for CN. So I think that's where the CAO was talking about moving a few things, clearing some shrub trees, maples and junk like that out of the way. Crystal Falls Road is as you take the overpass, you come off the off ramp, and before you go underneath the bridge or the overpass, you take a right instead of a left. So you're going hard right uphill, and I never really thought that there was any spots there, but there's...
It's a twisty little road. There's not too many, but we could probably put up another 6 or 7 parking spots, maybe max.
6 or 7, okay, that's fine. Councillor Cunliffe, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I recall one of the Brunswick residents, when this was brought up last meeting, seemed to have felt that the closure of that first spot you're talking about behind the boulders was brought in with the negotiation for the redevelopment of the Sea to Sky Highway for 2010, and that it was specifically closed because residents had asked to have it closed. So I would be very hesitant into doing anything until we look back into the committee meeting and minutes and see exactly what was discussed.
Yeah, I'm not actually talking about opening up that. I'm just talking about parking alongside of the road. That was a separate lot that is now overgrown with trees, and the berm was built up for privacy for the homes below. So I'm not talking about doing anything like that. I totally understand their comments from the meeting, and I'm not suggesting that in any way. All I'm talking about is parking on the side of the road, driving down Brunswick Road, as if you're going to just go into Brunswick before you get to the train tracks.
The former non-towing area. Yeah.
It's just there's no parking there right now as you drive down the hill. It's just street parking basically. And at the bottom, before you cross the train tracks, on the south side of the street, there's a little bit of a pull-out. Right now, I think it says fire lane, but it's not really logically necessary for a fire lane, I don't think, but I would double check with the fire chief. But there's a flat area of brambles in there that we could probably clear out. I'm not 100% on that, but we might be able to create a few more spots in there as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbott.
First of all, I don't agree with this idea that we're obligated to create parking for residents from all of the Lower Mainland to come and spend time on our beaches, spend time on our trails. I don't think we're obligated to do that, and we could never create enough. I think we know that no matter what we did, these 3 or 4 parkings, it just means next week it's going to be 8, and the week after it's going to be 12. We couldn't afford to, and we're not obligated to. I understand we want to be a welcoming community, and we don't want to be elitist and all those things, but we can't afford to keep trying to create parking spaces for people other than what we have. If you're talking about hiking Tunnel Bluffs, and we have parking space that's working, either at the school and other places, you can easily access Tunnel Bluffs from other hiking trails. They all join each other. You don't need to go park at the highway to get there. The other point is the people that are parking there are as likely to be going down to Brunswick Beach as they are to go hike Tunnel Bluffs. I've driven around there when we had all the parking issues, and I see more people walking down into Brunswick Beach than I see more walking up to the hiking trail. I know that hiking trails have become popular lately, and it's been one of the flavored trails that got shown on some hiking websites, which is been part of the problem. But I don't, this idea that I think Peter said, but in order to better achieve the objectives of both residents and visitors, we're going to have to create parking where none currently exists. I don't think that is going to be a successful strategy. I do think the residents that have spoken to us from Brunswick Beach do not feel that they want more parking created there. I think the residents will be opposed to it. Yeah.
I think we've got your idea, Councillor Abbott.
So my recollection is that one of them, if not both, actually did comment that they didn't have a problem with people parking in that interchange area, that it was beneficial rather than driving into their neighborhood. So and I can go back and listen to the recording, but that's my recollection. And I think that, you know, it's important to bear in mind that they're not our beaches, they're not our trails, they're the public's beaches, they're the public's trails. And yes, I agree that we're not obligated to create as many parking spaces as demand calls for, but I think that if we don't try to accommodate in the least impactful way to the extent that we can, then we're going to continue to see the issues come into all the other neighborhoods. And yes, on a sunny day, some of those people are going to go to the beach, some of them are going to go up the trail. But it is a handy location to access the trail going straight up from that location, rather than driving through all of our neighborhoods, looking for a place to park, and then driving back down the hill until they can find one. So I think that we can address a range of problems that exist throughout the village. It's not just Brunswick Beach who is affected by people parking or not parking in that spot. It is the whole village who is affected by people parking or not parking in that spot.
Okay, Councillor Bein.
Yeah, I got a couple of concerns about parking in that spot, and one of them is that summer by summer we've had trouble with people going down into Brunswick and moving on to a notorious beach and causing all kinds of problems with sanitation issues and other things. And I think if we provide parking, we're just encouraging it to be a continuing problem there. The other thing I'm concerned about too is if there's people parking there, are they going to be hiking up along the highway to Tunnel Point? And if so, I think it's just asking for trouble, and I wouldn't want to encourage it.
There we go.
Well, currently the social media sites for Tunnel Bluff direct people to drive all the way up Lions Bay and drive looking for parking up past the school. So they're telling people to come into Lions Bay right now. So
it's fine. Councillor Abbott, is your hand is still up?
Sorry, I'll lower my hand.
Thank you. I think Councillor Cunliffe will close with you. I think the people of Brunswick have put up with a lot over many years, and I would not be in favor of I would be fine with the Crystal Falls Road piece, which is ours, which we could take away some signage and create a few spots. That's fine. I would not be in favor of, and I would ask Modi, as long as they could possibly not take their signs away, that they not park there. I think there's a calmness that Brunswick has not enjoyed for a long, long time, and I think they're due. I get the piece about people driving around, but they're going to do whatever they do. I think the piece here is that, well, you know, whether I use the term obligated to create parking or not, we have one of the finest transit systems available in the country, and it drops people off right where they would park their car. So for $2.95, if I got out of the bed early on a Saturday morning, I can be in Lions Bay hiking at 9. I can be home by 9 o'clock. I don't need to worry about my car being towed or ticketed or anything. So I think social media needs to do a wake-up call, and I think that would make our residents of Brunswick happy, and we don't need to provide parking. So on this particular piece, I would be fine.
Ron, you make a good point. We actually have our own park and ride lot. I mean, come to think of it.
Well, the bus is running now, and the schedules are good, and there we go. So
I guess what I'm suggesting is people, if they really want to, could park at the park and ride and take the last link with the bus to Brunswick.
They can, people come from wherever they come from. I mean, I picked up some hitchhikers today. They came from Burnaby and Marpole. And okay, so there was some places they could park, but I suppose, you know, if you were really serious about stuff, you could take, anyhow, I'm just showing that's an alternative. So for me, on this particular section, I would be opposed to creating more parking or asking Modi to change the signage. Crystal Falls Road would be fine with me. Councillor Abbott?
So, can we just, Crystal Falls Road, we signed it for a reason. It's a very narrow little piece of road. I mean, people parking there are going to be very disruptive for the residents trying to get in and out. Why would we change that?
So we'd be just taking the signs down.
There's already some parking for visitors, and it's only occasionally, I think, that residents utilize those permit required spots. And I don't think that changing that and providing a few more spots is going to be impactful to the residents. There's 2 houses, I believe, that are there. I don't think it's going to impact them in terms of their own properties and ability to go in and out.
Have we
created them for a reason.
Have we asked the residents? Have we canvassed them? I know whenever it comes to parking in other areas, we do discuss it with residents. Do we know what their opinion is?
No, we didn't ask it when we put the permit required signage up either. We just
it's part of Lions Bay, so putting permit required signage is not necessary to canvass, to ask for permit within the resident, like we live here, so asking to remove it and create visitor parking, taking away, it's like going to the West End and removing the permit parking in front of the entire block of, one street on Harrow Drive in the West End, and removing all of that permit parking without asking what their opinion is of that would be negligent, in my opinion.
Okay.
As for the interchange on Brunswick, I can certainly say that one of the Brunswick residents that we spoke with last week has been a vocal advocate of not allowing parking there, and has in fact called bylaw and the RCMP when it's been overloaded with people parking. I don't think creating parking if someone wants to hike into Brunswick, as for Norm's point, we do have a park and ride lot. And if the school lot is reopened, as was stated that the district is willing to do that for us, then they can hike a little bit further. If you're here to hike or walk, taking an extra leg is really not an inconvenience if you've already made it this far. So I would not be in favor of opening up any parking in the lower Brunswick area. And I'd like to know what the residents of Crystal Falls say before we decide to remove the permit parking signs there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kana, for your closed loop on this. Councillor Abbott, your hand's up. I think I'm going to close quickly after your comments.
I made my comments earlier. My hand was up earlier when I was asking about Crystal.
Thank you very much.
But if we're moving on from that, I agree with Jamie.
All right, thank you very much. So to recap on the Brunswick interchange parking areas, council's unanimous in not changing, not modifying the Modi current situation. And that's the primary piece. I think we can leave it with staff if they want to amend the Crystal Falls. If they can contact the residents there, we'll leave that with staff.
Yeah, if we're going to contact those residents to get their thoughts on signage on Crystal Falls, I'm thinking maybe we ought to do a survey of the residents in the whole of Brunswick Beach and get some feedback on their thoughts about providing parking at the interchange, to see whether or not there's buy-in on the idea that lessens the amount of traffic going through their neighborhood, or whether they would rather it remain closed, or whether they would rather see parking on the side of the street going into their neighborhood so that people don't continue to drive across the tracks and through their neighborhood. That's something that I think we could probably undertake and get some data, get some feedback.
I think that makes good sense. Yeah.
Good. So just, I do have my left eye on the clock here. So I think we've given staff direction on this section here regarding the interchange. If staff, and I guess, I mean, you've got, I'm going to presume council's entirely going to endorse you contacting the residents of Brunswick on anything to do with parking or their thoughts on a variety of things. So unless there's a show of hands opposing that, we'll let staff do what they want to do on that. I would recommend that it's by way of mail drop.
Yeah, it might be hard to isolate Brunswick Beach post boxes. I think we'd have to do hand delivery, or would we be able to?
Yep.
Okay.
I think that a notice in the update that you're getting yours, please answer. But, you know, I'd rather, when we diagnose the data afterwards, I'd rather make sure that everybody had it in their hand.
Right, yeah.
So thank you for reading that. Okay. So council members, I think I'm taking the notional nod of heads that we're moving on here, which brings us to the jewel of the lot, which is the school parking lot.
So the school parking lot was closed after we contacted them to advise of issues that were happening on weekends, tailgate parties and fires in the playground. And with the end of the school year, they are amenable to us reverting back to the function that lower lot has always served in the summertime, acting as an overflow parking lot for hikers. And in fact, there is some signage at the Sunset Trailhead directing people that there is overflow parking at the school, at least there was. And there is a sign saying overflow at the school lot. Anyways, they are amenable to that and have given the go-ahead on that. And I think the last day of school is Thursday, so we could open that on Friday if council's agreeable with that. And that does provide additional parking that is helpful in a number of respects.
There you go. I think that we can go around the horn on this one, but I think this one's a pretty unanimous piece for council. I think I've been at the school lot twice in the last couple of days. I think on a bad day, even I could find room for 40 cars in there. I think more are possible. I'm thinking here that this might be something that might approach the Godfather Trailblazer and ask him to walk around with a can of spray paint. And if you parked over your car over the spray paint, you could probably find room for more than 40 cars versus just kind of snakes and ladders all over the place.
I don't know if that's
no bad idea.
The way to go on this. I think probably, yeah, I think that requires some consideration and
are you offering staff time on this?
I don't know. I'll talk to Mr. Jaffer about
all right.
what.
We're presuming.
I don't think so, but
okay.
I don't think it's necessarily the case that we need to paint lines on
okay.
that lot.
Okay, fine. It's just the mayor's crazy idea. All right, council members, I think we're a hearty yes in welcoming the school lot opening on Friday. Yes, 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 all around.
Yes,
good.
yeah.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to the close of this section. So just to recap, for you to check your notes, Peter. So on the village streets and boulevards, I think we've got the unanimous view on Mountain and Ocean View. School lot, yes, thank you very much for dealing with the school board. Brunswick interchange, currently no. You're going to address Crystal Falls Road residents, if you will, and you are on your own going to do the drop in contact with the Brunswickers on a variety of parking related issues. And yes to the Sunset Trailhead parking lot being opened. And I think we've covered them all. And portable toilets, yes, we covered those too.
Yeah.
So it's just at Sunset. It's putting one at the school out of thought or no? I don't know. I don't think we.
I think,
I don't know.
I think the one, you know, if they park at the school and then they hike up, by the time they get there, then they're ready to use it.
I think they're ready to
I
use
don't
it.
think we need to
Okay.
double dip them.
All right, fine. I'm good with that. All right. All right, so happily we are finished with parking, which brings us to the last item, which is in this part of the program, is that the program concept for volunteer beach park and trail ambassadors be further developed and implemented by staff. I'll put forward that motion. Can I have a hand for a second? We'll go to discussion. Somebody's got to do the heavy lifting here. Come on.
Second.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cunliffe. And we're into discussion. CAO, you want to, it's a great idea. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that I'd like to flesh out the idea a bit and see what it looks like and run it up the flagpole and see what kind of interest we get in the community.
You thinking community time for the grade 11s for next year or stuff like that? Are they too young?
I wasn't really thinking that. No, I'm thinking
Adults.
more mature
Okay.
people who are experienced at perhaps being diplomatic and helpful and friendly and
Good. Put out the call then. I am in favor of that, and this is.
Have we considered the other end of the age limit? Those that are highly susceptible, more highly susceptible to COVID due to the demographics. In lots of places, you're not allowed to go back to work or go back to normal if you're over 60. In some places, 65 in others. So if we are, I mean, this is a, even if some of us believe it's flattened, we're still dealing with COVID issues, and the older generation are more susceptible.
yeah, definitely something that ought to be stressed in terms of the call for expressions of interest and emphasized in terms of any discussion or interviewing process on whether or not they're suitable for that work.
You're thinking clearly sooner rather than later implementation if you're lucky. Yep, thank you. Okay. All right. I think, as I say, I think it's a good idea. It's a staff-led idea, and we'll see what the success is. If there's no other discussion on this matter, I'll call a motion. We'll move on. There being none, I'm calling the motion. All in favor, ayes, nays, opposed, please. Aye, thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. Councillor Abbott?
I still have extreme reservations about this, and the confrontation issue I had mentioned earlier, and where it goes. I want to say I'm a nay on this just because I have some serious reservations. Not nature just investigating it, but I'm not ready to say it's a good idea yet.
So you're opposed?
I'm opposed with carte blanche to go ahead and implement, yes.
All right, and there we have it. All right, the next topic is Mayor's report, of which there is none, but the topic that I had, and I'd prepped the Public Works Manager and the CAO on this, and not that I have one. I try not to think about doggies, but the doggy thought came to mind when I was canvassing people on Mountain Drive. With KG closed and the main Central Beach not for dogs. I can't believe I kind of vaguely remember, I was talking to Councillor Bein about this, I vaguely remember that on Lions Bay Ave, there was some right-of-ways or easements, narrow paths is what they amount to, between some houses which were perhaps, and I jocular when I say this, were in the dark ages, were perhaps intended for access to the beach. I'm sure that they're all brambled and grown over now. So I really don't see it as a likely opportunity for people to, our residents to park in Lions Bay Ave and essentially cut through people's yards, go to the people's backyards and have their doggy chase stick. So I think that the other option is Alberta Beach, kind of colloquially Brunswick Beach. And I observed when a resident mentioned it to me, and it was confirmed by Mr. Jaffer, that there's a little no doggy sign beyond this point sign. So I'm going to turn it over to staff on this one. So if I'm a homeowner and I'm going to take my doggy for a cool down, what should I do?
Well, one thing is you could get out your garden hose if we don't have water restrictions in effect.
Stand underneath the flower basket, honey.
Take them to Marjorie Meadows. No, it is a dilemma. I don't think that, Lions Bay Beach is feasible, even going north from the beachfront. I had a look at that today when I was down there, and it's, one cement block of jetty after another, and not friendly beach. So, and the other thing I'll point out off the top is that our bylaw says no dogs on Lions Bay Beach and Brunswick Beach. So when you go on Google and you say Brunswick Beach, what you get is you get a little park icon pointing right in Alberta Bay, and that I think is what most people would consider Brunswick Beach. I think that to the north of that, the north side of the point, it's a lot more rocky, and but there are favorable stretches where you could walk with or without your dog, and you can access that via the access point in between 26 and 29 Brunswick Beach Road. Walk right out onto the beach. So that would be what I would suggest as a potential option. I don't think that it would necessarily be contrary to our bylaw, because I think it's reasonable to interpret the bylaw as Brunswick Beach meaning south of the point. Just like I would interpret Lions Bay Beach as being the section of beach in front of the beach park, which is also what Google pinpoints it as. I looked as well at our lands at 63 Brunswick to see if that was a possibility, but Magnesia Creek is flowing pretty strongly right now. We don't have a bridge across there yet. So you can actually walk out to the point on the south side of the creek. There's a bench out there that I think the volunteers put out, but when you go on to the beach at that point, the boulders are huge, and you got to scramble over very, very unfavorable terrain for probably 30, 50 meters before you can get to a walkable stretch of beach. And I don't think it's feasible for anybody with their dog. As well, the rocks seem to have barnacles on them, so the tide, I'm sure, comes right up there at times. So I think that North Brunswick stretch is probably the only spot that could be feasible, and I don't think it would require a change in legislation for council, just an awareness piece. Again, that could be something that before we go ahead and invite people to do that, we're going to canvass the Brunswickers, ask them about that, get their thoughts on it. But so that's what I would suggest.
I think given that when I raised the topic, I was thinking we might throw the municipal coordinator under the bus with the doggy news and have her report it and take the abuse of Brunswickers. But I think putting it in the Brunswick survey thing is the right thing to do. Councillor Cunliffe?
Is that the access next to Hilda Mayo's home you're speaking of?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So yes, I have been down on that beach. I know in the past there are residents who let their dogs wander freely. We need to canvass the neighborhood and at least make them aware that if this is going to be the new dog destination for the remaining.
Okay, thank you very much.
Front loading, yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Abbott.
So we're suggesting that people in the rest of Lions Bay, the ones who take the dog for a swim, are going to go down to Brunswick Beach. They're going to have to get in a car to drive there, where they're going to park. I'm guessing the need you started off describing, May McLaughlin, was for a greater part of Lions Bay and not Brunswick. As I'm not sure the solution helps much. And I agree, you'd obviously have to talk to the neighbours.
You know, I think the answer here is to put it in the survey. I mean, the questions came innocently to me, which is why we're talking about it now. You know, I don't know Mr. Jaffer's going to laugh at me. I don't know the doggy psychology. Do they like to swim before noon? Do they like it after? I don't know. And how many people are we talking about? I mean, are we talking, you know, more than 50 people? I really don't know. So I'm quite happy leaving this as an information piece with council and letting staff do it in their survey.
So I can tell you when I used to go to Kelvin Grove to just take Yukon down to the water, I would always meet 2 or 3 or sometimes more people there, or virtually always. There's a parking lot. So if you live too far away like I do, you don't want to walk that far and back, you can drive there. This just doesn't seem like it's a substitute destination in my mind.
This is a short-termer. KG is going to be back in action middle of September.
I need to retain those Crystal Falls Road permit required spots.
That was a shot, CAO. There we go. Councillor Kellogg, your hands up.
Oh.
Thank you, Dan. All right, I think this is an information piece. We're leaving it with staff to follow up in their survey. Thank you, which brings us to the council reports. And we'll be going Councillor Bein on the emergency trails, Councillor Barmere on the Postmaster, and Councillor Barmere on the low carbon fuel program. And we will be doing an extension, and we could hit midnight tonight. So I would ask that everybody get to the point and let's get out of here before midnight. Councillor Bein.
Oh, okay. I noticed that pause. Yeah, I just wanted to mention about the emergency trails for evacuation. We've done a little bit of work on it, and had selected two pathways that could easily be developed, or we thought would. And we've run into something that on one of them, and I'd rather not identify them because I don't want to identify in public the people involved who had some discomfort with the concept. And even though I recognize that one in particular is entirely on public land, or we would use it, it would cause some concern to at least a couple of the neighbors, if not more, if we put something through at this time. One's going through a difficult time with their business, and another one's got family issues that they're struggling with, and they really don't want to talk about it now. And I think for the sake of compassion for our residents, we've got to wait till we hear them out and see what they feel about the whole thing. So that one's put on hold. The other one that we thought would be pretty good this past weekend, we had a look at it, and it's got some challenges too. So we're making some progress, but we haven't really got what we want done. And in the course of the study, I'm reminded of an inventor, Thomas Edison, who once said, I haven't failed, I've just found 10,000 reasons why it wouldn't work. So we'll be looking at the other 9,000 from here on. So that's about all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Boromir?
Yeah, I'll keep the one with the postmaster quite quick. I had reached out to Charlene Moses, who is the a local area superintendent for postal staff, and I just, highlighted the issues with the hours being really impractical for most working residents, and just in general the change of the setup there. And so basically what she's said to me today is that they've shifted the pickup window from 1:45 to 5:45 to allow, their customers, ultimately, postal customers and our residents, to get their items. And they seem to have worked out an arrangement with the store employees who can now access the mail room to also get parcels. So it seems that her and Craig have come to some agreement. And that's all I have on that. The second piece is as it relates to, and I just want to pull up, talked about this briefly last week with Peter, and there was a concern around the language of being a fuel supplier. So there's two things I want to touch on. The first is that we have, with most of the heavy lifting done by Penny Nelson, she's helped us write our expression of interest. So the BC government has an LCFR credit program that basically gives people carbon credits that they can sell or trade. They're worth money. And in order to qualify for these credits, you have to be, you have to meet some criteria. So essentially what's happened right now is that the LCFR program Part 3 has opened up the program for candidates to submit what's called an expression of interest. So it's a brief 2 to 4 page project summary, and it's sort of an, it's a courtship, and they'll see if we qualify or if we'd be considered. And one of the key things to understand is that the project categories supported by the Part 3 agreement include, among a whole number of things, deployment of non-residential electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So we would qualify for that. And as a point of comparison, for hydrogen fueling stations, we put single points out, so one nozzle, and we also qualify to apply for these LCFR credits. And they're typically to a maximum of 50% of the capital of the project. One of the things that had come up last week in discussing this with Peter was the definition of a fuel supplier. So I looked up what that is, and it's fairly straightforward. And there's room for interpretation. It's possible that I'm missing something, but it's an information bulletin put out by the Ministry of Energy and Mines and Petroleum Resources, and it basically reads as follows: a Part 3 fuel supplier for emerging fuels in the category of electricity would be a person. So for electricity, a person will be a Part 3 fuel supplier if all of the following conditions are met. First, that the person sells electricity in British Columbia and has a reasonable belief that some of the electricity they sell will be used for transportation and substitution for gasoline, diesel, and fuel. So we would meet that in the sense that our electric charger provides fuel to vehicles directly. It's not ambiguous in any way. The second piece is that the person will be able to, by the deadline for submitting Part 3 compliance reports, identify a specific quantity of the electricity that they supplied, which was used for transportation in substitution for gasoline or diesel fuel. And for us, that's built in because the only way we can charge for fuel is we have a revenue grade meter, and a revenue grade meter is very exact. So we'll know exactly how much energy we supplied, and we're only supplying it to vehicles. So our claim for a Part 3 credit would be fairly straightforward. Again, this is all on paper, and we are only asking to submit an expression of interest. It's not a commitment. It's just to see if we'd even qualify. So that's what I have to say about that.
Good. Can I ask a question? Norm, you said there was 3 things to qualify, but you just mentioned 2, I think.
No, sorry, there's only 2. So
okay.
For electricity, there's only, it's a Part 3 fuel credit. So maybe that's where the confusion came in, but there's only two categories to meet to be considered a Part 3 fuel supplier for emerging fuels, of which electricity is one.
Okay. Would you be able to send me the references that you got for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So in tangible terms, we could potentially win another $50,000, and I think we should go for it.
So the expression of interest is, you said it's about 3 to 4 pages. How detailed does it have to be, and how accurate in terms of the infrastructure that we're proposing for our project? Because I don't think we've yet drilled down to the extent of understanding fully what the operational costs are, or how that will be implemented.
You know, I think it's essentially a narrative of what we're doing. So it's telling the story of what we plan to do. I don't know that it's super detailed, to be quite honest. I mean, they understand that these are community initiatives, and they have a larger goal in mind, which is to get people to move over to low carbon credits, low carbon fuels, pardon me. And I think they look at it with that eye. You know, they may come back to us and say, in order for us to go beyond the expression of interest, we have to get more things nailed down, or we have to be more specific. That's a possible, you know, outcome.
Right.
But generally, I think this expression of interest is really just showing what it is we have planned, with the understanding that there's a potential that it may not even come to be, right? I mean, that we just have to be honest about that. So it's
okay. And sorry, is that something you've been working on, or that?
So I found, I learned about the application last week. I was really underwater with a lot of other obligations, so I couldn't tackle it, and I put it out to Jamie and Penny jumped on it right away and gave us a really solid draft. And I think we can have this thing hammered out in the next couple of days. It's quite a tight timeline. It has to be submitted by 5 p.m. on July 3rd.
Okay. Great.
I'm just going to keep pushing.
Yeah.
Good for you. Alrighty, thank you very much, Councillor Barmere. Committee reports, there are none. Emergency services, I see the Surrey Regional Fire Dispatch Monthly Report on Lions Bay Fire Rescue is here on page 135. Unless you've got something to add, CAO, we'll just have the motion to receive. Okay, I'll put forward the motion to receive. Can I have a second? Thank you. I'm going to presume there's no discussion. I'll presume all in favor as well. Thank you very much. Which brings us to resolutions, which we've done. Correspondence. Norm, only 1 more month to go.
Okay, so just give me a second here. I got to pull up my notes. It starts on page 139. Just give me a second here. So, okay, so 139, I just made some general notes here. We got a letter from I guess a non-resident that received a ticket in Brunswick Bay complaining about it. I don't know that we need to do anything, so I would like to just mark this as received and leave it with staff, unless there's any other concerns. The next is Metro Vancouver Mayor's local government support with provincial government. I think the long story short of it is they thanked everyone for the letter, but really there wasn't going to be anything else coming forward in terms of support. Is that about right, Ron? I mean, there was requests for taxes.
Yeah,
we're ultimately a no. Okay. The 2020 Climate Caucus Summit, I think Jamie and I will take that offline and discuss whether we can make a showing, right, Jamie? The next would be the climate leadership course for municipal elected officials, and I think we've nominated Jamie to go. Is that the same?
Yes, I think.
Yes, and in agreement with you before, Norm. Sorry, I couldn't.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
I was trying to unmute. But yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So that's where we're at with the climate leadership course. The next is MP Wheeler giving us an update on what the government is doing to support during COVID-19. And I guess I'm generally just assuming that the CFO and the CEO are on top of any relief we might be eligible for. I don't know if there's anything to follow up with on that letter other than we received it for information. And last would be an email or a letter from Mr. Shepherd regarding the wood fiber LNG project. And I guess my only question was, and I think the answer is yes, but there was an extension granted and Ruth was able to submit her questions before the deadline, correct?
Correct, and we're all done here.
Okay, perfect. And then I think the next one is resident correspondence.
I'll make it easy for you,
Okay.
Councillor Barmayer.
Yeah.
I will do R1 to R6.
Okay.
And to respond. I think also, actually, I was thinking about Mr. Mora on G1. I'll respond to him too.
Okay.
And which brings us to, I think, the Meiklejohn issue and CAO. Do you want to shed light on that?
I'll be bringing that back as an encroachment application. It's sort of fallen off the side of my desk, and I've been working with the subject property owner for a while, so that'll come back shortly.
Okay, so we're done. Thank you very much, Councillor Barmayer. Thank you. Okay, new business. There is none. Public questions and comments. And I see we have the public online. You're welcome for 2 minutes if you wish to join in. Take that as a pass. Thank you very much. And so we will be going to the closed council meeting shortly, and the proposed topics for discussion in the absence of the public are a sale of land and awards. That the meeting be closed to the public on the basis of matters to be considered under the following sections of the community charter. I'm losing my voice, so I'm not going to read them all, but it is 90, number 1, B, E, and N. And council does not anticipate reconvening the open meeting for any purpose other than to adjourn the meeting generally and report out if applicable. Can I have a show of hands confirming that that's acceptable to the rest of council? I think that is a yes all around. Councillor Abbott, good, thank you. All right, then we will be going into closed. And so say good night, and we've said goodbye already.